Hi guys, I've been working closely with Tam and Richard to put you guys together. So we are doing the Knowing My City section, and before that we had I think it was Laura from Coventry University and somebody else from City of Culture talk to us about data. And we thought it's very nice because that's theory, but if we're going to know our city, we want to know how to put that theory into practice. So today we've got Laura, L, and one of me and Laura's good friends, John Bernard, who's a spoken word artist and an entrepreneur, and he's going to come as well and talk to you guys about how he uses Coventry in his work, City of Coventry implements it in his work, and how he um, basically how he got to know his city and know the groups that needed his help. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do today, and I think hopefully through that, then we are able to put that into practice for ourselves because I believe as cultural leaders, it's lovely to be on these Zoom calls and have these sessions, but we can't lead if we don't know the city that we're supposed to be representing and we're supposed to be there for. So it's about us getting out there and targeting groups of people and marginalized voices that need our help, and we can't really do that from behind our desk. We have to be active, so hopefully these guys' stories and journeys would help us put that into practice for ourselves. um so John will come in at 12:30. Over to you, Richard.
You. A really nice introduction, Chrissy. And I think what we thought we'd do was have hear a little bit more from Chrissy in this opening slot through me asking her some questions.
Yep.
And my first question was going to be actually like, why did you see that it was necessary to have this second panel related to knowing my city after that first one that had like Shanine and Mark and Laura from the trust? And I think you've already answered that. I really love the sense of how that's coming through. What for you? What does knowing my city mean, Chrissy? What does that? How does that relate to your
um
creative work?
I think as a creative, because I'm based between Coventry and London, but in Coventry, I think the way that I got to know Coventry was by working with Laura and Morocco and just putting myself out there and be willing to meet communities. Because for me as an artist, everything that I write, I am what I write. And I always say to myself, I am what I envision. So it's everything that I write is based on my journeys. And I think art is a beautiful way to tell stories. And in terms of community work, I actually would love to work with marginalized voices, but working with Morocco and being out there on the front line and knowing the city in Coventry and meeting up with other organizations helped me implement that in my artwork. And even if I'm not publicly speaking, but writing my poetry and creating work that revolves around those marginalized voices that I've spoken to. So it's about basically just giving yourself to them and just being in their space and hearing their stories and just listening and then putting it into the art. So that's how it's really helped me know Coventry. And Coventry's for me, like being at uni, you only see Coventry as in the city centre, but coming out of that, you see more to Coventry, and then you meet talented people and different communities that you wouldn't have met just staying in the four walls of the university. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes loads of sense. And like last time we had a panel, we were looking at knowing the city using data in particular with Mark, and but also Shanine was talking about kind of how the city inspires creative action, what kinds of programs of work are kind of coming through understanding the city. What kinds of ways do you see cultural leaders um, knowing the city? Like there's that data way. How else do you see yourself as an artist and others kind of relating to the city and being informed by it in the creative work that you make?
Um, I think it's two ways because there's like cultural leaders here who may not be great public speakers, but they could know the city through their artwork by basically putting themselves out there and just giving, even if you're just giving your time to work with communities, and even if it's just passing on skills or just making a project that's based around communities and the city, then through your art you know, you would know your city better. Most of us are public speakers, so we think the best thing as well to know your city is look for community groups. Basically, I feel like building that foundation of who you want to work with and what your passions are, and then looking for those groups and those places where those passions can come to life, whether you want to work in a community or whether you are an artist, but just making sure everything is solely based your city. And I think it's important as cultural leaders that we have something to give back to the city. It could be through our art or just through us being very outspoken and just being a voice for people that don't have that, and using our platform to help push for change. It's important.
It's really nice. And so what does community leadership look like to you? You know, what do you see cultural leaders who are connected to communities, connected to the city, what do you see them doing? That what is it like in action? Because I really like your practical focus.
It's I think one thing I think of, it's not about me, it's about those people that I want to change. And I think being a community leader is that ability to listen, and put your pride aside, because when you're leading it's different from when you're doing corporate, because obviously it's about business, but when it's more community, it's more personal and it's more about the people that you're working with. And I think that's important to really put yourself in that space where you can listen to them, and basically just making sure that you're doing everything that they need. Because if you want to help out a community, it's important that you know what that community needs for you to do, not for you to do what you think is right for them.
Right.
Kind of thing, yeah.
So that sounds like strong listening, sounds like curiosity.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And I suppose is there something in there as well that's about like about empathy and about connection, relationships? It feels like those things are really
very important. Yeah, very important.
And when you think about your work, can you give us some examples of where knowing Coventry has affected what you've made, what you've written?
I did Refugee Week with Morocco, and I think that allowed me to understand what the group of people in Coventry go through. And I did that we did Bearing Gifts, and what it was really nice because I had to respond to what I had heard. So we had like some refugees like send us over some voice notes of, you know, just for this basically like replying to the theme, and then through that I made a piece that was not about what I thought that they went through, but it was proper like hearing what they went through and putting it into my artwork. So I think that really helped me know what they go through, because we only know what we see on the media. But I thought when you have that relationship with them and when you have that conversation and provide them a space where they can be open and actually tell their stories, then you're able to put their stories out for them properly. And I think that helps with my journalism. You know, knowing communities helps as a journalist tell the people's stories better than you telling the story the way you telling their story in the way that the public perceives them or the way you perceive them. So yeah, it's about their lived experience and then putting that into your work.
And what have you noticed about the way that other people experience your work because it's responding to the city, or because it's kind of a result of listening and a result of relationships, a result of empathy? What effect, I'm just thinking about that from an audience perspective, or reader's perspective, as well as from the artist's perspective. What have you noticed about the effect that your work has on communities?
I think for me, when I perform and then I hear people, it's one thing they say it's real and it's raw and it's unfiltered, because I don't filter anything. I just say it how I see it and how it should be said. And I think that's one impactful thing. It's like eye-opening for some people, especially when we speak about things that people don't want to speak about, and brush under the carpet. So when I do write, I make sure that it's raw, it's authentic, and it's just real. Like, we're not hiding anything. And I think that's what people always say to me, that's how they feel about the pieces and the work that I create. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. So, do you want to say a bit about the people that you've invited
Yeah.
to speak today in the next 10 minutes before we have our first conversation with John?
Yeah.
Yeah, why did you pick John, Elle and Laura, and what is it that you're hoping to hear from your conversations with them today?
Okay, so I picked John because John is one of my mentors, and as a spoken word artist, I really do look up to his work and what he produces, and I really do. I just like what he stands for, and and I just really do like the fact that he's really about, especially with Base. So Base is basically social enterprise where he goes into school and he works with young boys from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they do music and spoken word and basically using his own life experiences and basically trying to make sure that young men don't go for this, boys don't go for the same things that he goes through. And I think that's why I picked John. So I feel like John will come from a side of, as an artist, how the city affects his work. I picked Laura because Laura is one of my biggest inspirations. I never told this. I never told her this, but I do look up to Laura because she's very, very, very she's basically unshakable. She basically is for the community. She's about it. Like Laura will do work for the community even if it's not paid. And I really do admire what she stands for. So I think, and she's been working in Coventry for a really, really long time, and she's done a lot of amazing things doing it on her own before the team came and started to help her out. So I think she would give you guys good advice, and you can hear a story about how she started working with migrant communities, why she started doing it, and how it's impacted her life and her as an artist as well. And I like Elle work because I've been hearing Elle talk about the stuff that she does in her community, especially in Foes Hill, and I can tell that Elle is very hands-on. Like, she just does it, and she just gets the job done. And I think she would give guys loads of advice about the marginalized voices that she works with and why she does it, especially freelance as well, because I think it's rare to have Elle's role done freelance, because a lot of people do it in-house. So I think those three would be really, really good, and hopefully they can help us as culture leaders know our city better.
And what would you like people to come away from today, from the conversations that we have over the next few hours? What are you hoping that your colleagues on this program will like? What insights are you hoping that they'll land?
I just hope that everybody will learn that we don't have to be large organizations to have an impact on communities. We could just be one person, but as long as we have the willingness and the desire to make change, we can do that. And change is all about action. And I think that's an important thing. And as a cultural leader, as a leader in general, like, we have to remember that even though we kind of like are the face, we have to remember that we should always remember that we still have to put in the work in terms of groundwork. And the same work that our work, that the same work that the people that we work with do, even though there's kind of like will be a hierarchy, but we still need to remember that we still have to put in the work and basically emerge ourselves into these communities and create those relationships.
Really nice, thank you. So before we hear from John, I wondered whether, Chrissy, it might be nice to hear what other people in this group would like to get out of today, and that might even kind of filter through into the questions that you ask. And also, I thought, maybe you want to say a bit about how you're planning to run the rest of this session.
Okay.
As we run up to having John here. So should we hear from people what they'd want to get in the session, and then you talk about how you're planning to run it?
Yeah. So the floor is open for everybody else to speak.
You can go first, Melissa.
I'll ask a question to kind of kick us off. Chrissy, you seem to inspire me by your ability and your unstickability to get on with things from such a young age. And I think that's really admirable. How do you think the role of and I don't like using minority ethnicities, but it's probably the only way to explain, minority ethnicities, young leaders in the city is going to play to help build Coventry in the next 2, 5, 10, or how many years that you think it could be important. What do you think your role as a young leader and the wider role as a minority ethnicity leader in the city is going to play?
I think it will have a big impact, but only if I stick to what I know and what I believe in. So there's no point me taking on a role and then switching up on my people when I have a lot of young people looking up to me. And I think one thing is just being myself, my authentic self, and just giving Chrissy. And I think that's one thing that I feel like I'd want young people to understand is just be you and don't be what society envisions you to be. Because when we do that, then we're just living to live. But I think that's one thing that as a cultural leader, I just want to just give everybody myself. So everybody that meets Chrissy has the same thing to say about me in terms of my personality. And it's just showing them that we don't have to do things, especially as artists. My big passion is we don't have to do things the way these organizations tell us to do things. So for me, it's like, as a writer, when I started writing, when we use slang, it's seen as, oh, it's dirty language. But when I read a Benjamin Zephaniah poem and he used patois, and I was like, he's using his own vernacular and the poem is amazing. So this was like, I can actually write the way I speak, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's just, he gave us his authentic self. And that's one thing that I want young people to understand. Just give us yourself and be a rebel and make art and create and lead the way that you know how, as long as it's making an impact. So yeah. So that's one thing. Oh, yeah. Anybody else before we let John in? Okay, so John is already here, so I think Tam's gonna let him in and then we can kick off.
Melissa's put something in the chat bar.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, Melissa. Okay.
Melissa looks like she's won the lottery.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. So Melissa said that she wants to see how she can work with different communities that she's never worked with before and how she can connect with them so she can hear new perspectives, which I think is good. Which is what I hope you can get out of these speakers, because they've all worked in different communities. Yeah. So hi, John.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, not bad at all.
I almost thought he was a leader, one of the leaders.
Yeah, the way he just
like what?
The way he just snuck in. I was like, oh, he's here.
We have them all.
How you guys getting on?
Good.
Just enjoying my coffee. Trying to.
Okay, so we're going to start now. So John, hi. So if you can introduce yourself, what you do in the community and what groups you work with.
Okay, yeah. So firstly, thank you for having me. I appreciate the platform to be able to share my experiences and what we do. So my name is John Bernard. I'm a poet. I'm a rapper. I'm also an entrepreneur. I founded a social enterprise called BASE, which is an acronym for Be a Change Everywhere. And the vision behind BASE was to utilize the art form of spoken word poetry to engage young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, such as myself. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to offer a mentorship-based workshop that was focused on 4 core areas. And these areas are identity, potential, legacy, and habits. And the reason why we chose those 4 core areas, because we believe that a misunderstanding of each area can either cause a young person to, waste their youth or even, lose their lives as well, as we've seen in certain circumstances. So what we wanted to do was to, impart the right information so it can impact them in the right way and they can embark on a purposeful journey and kind of offer them something that, I kind of missed on as well growing up. So, yeah. So that's what we do. And we're based in Coventry, and we work with young people aged 11 to 18-year-olds. We work in schools, we've worked with the police, we've worked with other youth organisations that are committed to working with young people as well, and who have the same passion that we have as well.
Can I ask you a question around the poetry?
Yeah, hit me, yeah.
Do you do slam poetry?
Do you know what? I don't. I've been invited so many times to do slam poetry, but it's not really my thing.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
Yeah, do you know what? I believe I would kill it, but I feel like I don't think it's for me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's for me. Yeah. I feel like if that's the avenue that you kind of want to, you know, kind of be on and get on with, then yeah, fair dues, do it. It's like rap battles basically. Not every rapper is a rap battler, if you get what I mean. So it's really up to you. Yeah, 100%.
It's just something I wanted to explore, but I've been asking around like different people into different things, and it's, you know, so yeah. Thank you.
And it all depends on what you write as well. If you write for shock value, and if you have certain poems which are, I would say, provocative in a certain way, then it might work out, because it's all about engaging the audience, isn't it, with slam poetry? So it just depends on what you write about and how you can kind of navigate that through that sort of stage.
Okay, back to topic, because I think Christine is going to kill me.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, John.
No, you're welcome.
Oh, sorry. The next question is, how did you get involved in community work?
Yeah, so for me, it's all to do with my story and my experiences growing up. So just a bit about my background. So I was orphaned at the age of 11. Ended up going through care, and then ended up being adopted by a family friend of mine, well, my mom's. And from there on, during my teenage years, you know, I was highly involved in doing stupid stuff. And by 15, I was arrested multiple times. And my path was really just going, you can even predict where I was going, either prison or, you know, ending up being dead. And what happened was, again, there was people that were put in place who, you know, really valued what I did. So I've been doing music and poetry for quite some time. And, you know, they created a space for me to kind of, you know, utilize my gift. And with God's grace, I ended up making the right choices and, you know, left that stuff aside, ended up going to university. Did a placement with a company, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Ended up doing really well. They kept me on, did a grad scheme, worked my way up to head office, running the recruitment side of things. And when I was there, every time I drove past my old areas and I was seeing what was going on, and I was hearing what, you know, young people were getting up to, you know, it aches me, really aches me. So I just thought to myself, you know, what can I do to sort of, you know, bring some light back to my community and just, you know, try to help the young people who were going through the same things I was going through when I was growing up. And I remember I had a speaking engagement at school to do some poetry, and I never looked back ever since. Like, literally, I did a speaking engagement, it was an assembly, and that was it. Like, never looked back. Ended up resigning and started bass. And from there on, it's just been working with young people and trying to engage them as much as I can.
That's actually really good. That's really good. And I think a lot of people, because of lived experience, they end up getting involved in community work. And I think that's one of the most important things, especially for me, is once you're able to come, especially from where we come from, in those underrepresented areas and unfunded areas, once you're able to come out of that and do well for yourself, I think it's important that you go back and try and help other young people navigate that life, because you know how hard it was to have somebody to help you out. So I think that's very, 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 very important, and that's really good. So what helped you understand Coventry as a city and understand the needs, and what areas in Coventry needed you and Bass's help? What helped you navigate that?
So, I mean, what helped me understand Coventry as a city is, you know, growing up here, you know, growing up and seeing, you know, the different sides of the city, you know, so the beautiful side where, you know, we've got a great sense of community, you know, where people really come together, as we've seen with the Black Lives Matter rallies, like everyone comes together in unity to fight against, you know, say an enemy in that sense. And you also get to see the dark side of things, the poverty, the lack of opportunities in certain areas, and the consequences that follow with obviously youth violence and so forth and so on. So, you know, I guess that kind of helps me to sort of know where I need to be, you know. So growing up, I mean, I I grew up in a disadvantaged area, and most of my friends came from disadvantaged areas. So we've kind of learned to navigate through these areas. And when we go back to, you know, certain areas and we speak to young people from these areas, we know exactly what to kind of say and how to go about things, because it's just, you know, there's that saying that there's nothing new under the sun. It's just a different generation. So it really is just that, really understanding where they're coming from. And once you've kind of experienced it yourself as well, you kind of, you have no judgment about you. It's all genuine, and they can sense that as well. You know, you're not going there to kind of be like a superhero or whatever it is. It's just trying to be that person that can help and direct them towards a, you know, a higher purpose in that sense. So yeah, I feel like experience is key in knowing the city in that sense, knowing kind of what to do, where to go, you know, what places need help, and yeah, how to navigate through those circumstances and environments.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, how has knowing your city helped you as an artist shape your work? Because I see some of your stuff. So I see you did some stuff with the Herbert Art Gallery.
Yeah.
Commission, and I know you did another spoken word piece on men's mental health about the guy that took his life at Canal Basin. So I can see that majority of your work is centered into the city. So how does Coventry as a whole really impact you as an artist?
A lot. Like, if you listen to majority of my stuff, is based literally, you know, around the city, my experiences of what I've seen that pains me, or something that provokes my heart to write about stuff. And like I was saying to the girl before about, you know, slam, because my type of my artwork in itself is, you know, it's always provoked by something that aches my heart. I can't just write for the sake of writing. It has to provoke me. It has to be something that's touched me in a certain way. So and the city provokes that. You know, it provokes, for me personally, a higher level of creativity. The funny thing is with Herbert, when I was about 15, the Herbert Gallery used to have a studio in there as well. And it used to be like an open space where they'll take you through this course of sound engineering. And once you've done that, you can go in and record yourself. So one of the first things I ever recorded was at Herbert Gallery. So it's like, when I had the opportunity to do that, it was kind of like, oh man, it's a must, I do this, you know? So yeah, the city does help my creativity, and everything I do really stems from what I see around the city, what's going on, whether it's the racial issues, whether it's the community cohesion, whether it's, you know, the young person that lost their life, and, you know, the Canal Basin bridge, you know, so stuff that I know that, you know, we all need to be aware of. So more like social commentary, you know, we all need to be aware of what's going on. What can we do together as a community? Even with the Canal Basin Blues, it was more so of, you know, what we're doing to help each other in these times. You know, there's so many things going on. And, you know, one of the things I heard that really provoked me was, you know, people taking pictures, you know, so I wanted to kind of see like, okay, you know, where are we in these times? You know, more than just taking pictures, what are we doing to help each other? You know, more than living in the social media impacted world, like what can we do on a physical? You know, who are we checking up on a day-to-day basis? That sort of thing. So yeah, man, the city does definitely impact my creativity.
Thank you. Melissa just put a question in the group chat. She said, love what you said about creating spaces to utilize gifts. What areas in the city do you work in, or are you citywide?
I'm citywide, but majority of the specific areas that I work in are Bow Green, Hillfields, Stoke Aldermore, and a bit of Tyre Hill here and there. But yeah, it's majority of the time it is those areas and schools in that area as well. So.
Thank you. So the last question I had for you is, what advice would you give to us to help us get to know our city and get more involved in our communities?
I think it's utilizing the organizations that are already in place, volunteering, being there, utilizing the community leaders that you know. Also, obviously, when the COVID restrictions are uplifted, you know, creating events that will be able to attract different communities and different groups, so you can kind of see where the need is at and how you can respond to the need. And it's all about responding to a particular need as well. I feel like that's a key thing to do. But I'll say, yeah, definitely utilizing the community leaders, the organizations that are in place, volunteering, being where you kind of need to be or where you're needed. I think that will help you in navigating through the city and understanding it more.
Okay, and a quick question for me: what organizations did you work with first before you created Base, or did you just go straight and create Base?
No, the police. The police have got a department called a VR unit, so the violence reduction unit. And when I did the first engagement at school assembly, there was an officer there who really liked the response that the poem had from the kids, and they were setting up like a school tour that they were doing, and working with different cohort of young people who are deemed as susceptible to joining gangs and that sort of stuff. So I did that with the police for quite some time, and that kind of gave me the reassurance that this is definitely what I need to be doing. And then from there on, that's when I started the YMCA as well. Did a lot of work with the YMCA, the Coventry Boys and Girls Club. I'm currently here right now as well, so I did a lot of work with them. Currently doing a lot of work with them as well. So it's just about knowing what's out there and who's doing what and who's passionate about young people. So yeah.
Okay, so thank you, John. Now I'm opening the floor to anybody that has questions for John. I know, Benji, you said you've got a question. Would you like to ask it?
It's just a short question. You know the music video you did, Don't Judge Me, it was really good. But I wondered if you were ever thinking about making it around like a dance?
Making it around dance? What do you mean?
Using the music video like to do a dance piece.
Oh, right, okay, for like the spoken word Don't Judge Me, using that that particular. Right, yeah, it's not something that we considered, but it could work. That piece was written by the young people as well in Hillfields, and we just saw it as a way to express their concerns and what they were going through. But yeah, it could work as a dance piece. Definitely
it reminds me of a dance piece. It's really, really good. I recommend everyone listens to it.
Were you thinking of creating a dance for it, or?
Well, I'm doing something with a rap artist. I'm doing a storyboard for him with a music video. So it's just like absolutely crazy. But yeah, because I used to do dance, you see, and sometimes I can recognize if a piece of music is would be okay for dance.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, feel free to use it if you think of something. Let us know. That'd be great.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Melissa said on the group chat, love hearing your story and your work. Really inspires. So thank you. Can you share ways to connect with your socials or emails? So yeah, I will share John's socials with you guys. I'll send them to Tam and then she can like pass them over to you. Yeah. Perfect. Anybody else got any questions for John? Yes, Elle.
Mute myself. Hi, John. Nice to meet you. Very interesting. Okay? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting listening to you. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on like the progression routes for young people. So because I've done some work with particularly women who've experienced exploitation that starts at a very young age. And one of the things that we noticed is that when you get to sort of like 18 to 21, there seems to be like a bit of a gap in provision. And I wondered what your perspective is on whether that gap is there, or sort of like how we help support like the plug in that gap between sort of like young people and like adult orientated sort of community provision.
Yeah, definitely. I do think there is a gap, and in some cases there's a lack of information and what is available, and what the young people can do as well. I feel like sometimes it's just either it's like, oh yeah, get a job now, and that's it. But it's not as simple as that as well. Again, there's so many factors that play a part in that. But I think it's our duty as well sometimes, if we are given us opportunities to be able to mentor these young people and be there for them, is for us to kind of know what what's out there for them, apart from just getting a job, apart from maybe education in that sense as well. There's I know there's some good organizations that deal with helping you with starting your own business, for example, and they'll take you through like a 6 months program where you can learn about opening your business, what goes into doing your taxes, and that sort of thing. And I feel like just having this information as us as mentors can kind of help out, because not everyone is for education in that sense, or getting a job straight away. Some people can have creative ideas they just need to implement, and sometimes it could just be counseling that people need before anything else. So even that's been an issue in itself. What's available, and not only what's available, but the wait in time. So it's just yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one. Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. I sometimes wonder to myself, like, why it seems to me like a lot of adults have a real difficulty like engaging with young people, like on a level. That's just an observation.
But you know what it is, Ellie? I feel like, it is? I feel like you can't give what you don't have. You need to have. It might not be experience, but compassion, and it's crazy because when we go to certain schools and we see how certain kids are with certain teachers who are completely away from that, like, so certain teachers who never grew up in certain areas, but they have such a connection with kids that you wouldn't even believe, right? But it's just the compassion and how authentic they are towards these kids, that these kids just feel it straight away. And you get other teachers who the kids completely obviously dislike, because they sense a lack of authenticity behind their character. So I feel like it's really having that compassion first, having compassion for, where they are, what they're going through, and removing that judgment aside as well, and and young people can sense that as well.
And to add on to what you just said, John, you're actually right, because even growing up and going to school, I went to a school where there were not a lot of black girls. And the way teachers, sometimes I know as young people we can act out, but the way teachers speak to kids, like I had a teacher say to us, take off your bandana, this is not LA Compton, and things like that really do affect us, because it's like, you can't, I feel like there's teachers that need training on how to talk to young people from disadvantaged backgrounds and areas that are gang related, because it does affect us, even though we might take it as a joke and it's fashion to us, but inside it really does hurt us to hear teachers say things like that, because you don't know what those young people have seen in those areas, you don't know what they've experienced, and then comparing them to a gang so violent in LA only just puts that stigma onto them. So I think a lot of teachers just don't have that compassion. Like I've been to school with teachers that really don't care. Like they'll just talk to you anyhow, and they don't understand, as a young person, everything you say, everything an adult says shapes how a young person becomes. Definitely. I think it's a training that teachers need to do.
Do you know, there was a funny situation where coming, just to follow that up as well. One of the kids I was mentoring, and because of like the area that the kid comes from, you have to have like a certain what do you call it, like a wall. So the teacher said something to that young person, and the young person said, "What?" As in, like, it looked to the teacher, it looked aggressive, but to the young person, it was more like, if someone in my area, if I'm in a certain area, somebody calls me and I'm like, what? Like automatically this wall goes up. So it wasn't trying to be offensive or aggressive, but it's just an instinctual thing. So he was sent to isolation. He had to go through all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, it's that barrier of misunderstanding, like you said. I mean, teachers, some teachers definitely need to kind of, have a lesson in that as well, in understanding where certain kids come from. It's not as simple, as easy as, or as black and white as certain actions may seem.
So Melissa says, how do the young people you work with view culture? Is there a demand, or is it more about exploring options with them?
Sorry, repeat that for me, please.
How do young people you work with view culture? Is there a demand, or is it more about exploring options with them?
You culture, do you say?
View culture, how do they view it?
Oh, view culture, as in what sense?
Melissa's gonna have to explain that a bit more. But that's the question. So how do the young people you work with view culture? Is there a demand, or is it more about exploring options with them?
View culture. Yeah, you're gonna have to explain that to me. What do you mean by view culture? Like,
I think Melissa's just typing, so we'll give her a minute. But from what I guess I heard from that as she starts responding, is just what is their perspective of what, because, you know, obviously, you know, Coventry being the city of culture and with us being cultural leaders, I guess in that respect, and, you know, wanting to work within, like, we're all working in cultural fields, even though we might not see that, do the young people have a particular perspective on it? Do they view it that way? Do they view it the same ways we view it? Is there a specific ask for type of culture that they want to be a part of, or is it about kind of just exploring your ways creatively with them in the way that you do? Is that kind of it, Melissa? Have I captured that?
Yeah. So yeah, just wondering what they feel about culture. She just, what did she put? Just wondering about. Okay, so in terms of like you know, young people, well, the young people I've worked with, majority of them, and I guess that might be because of obviously the COVID, the lockdowns, the restrictions. It's all here saying, like, oh yeah, we're Coventry City of Culture, but majority of them don't know what that actually means. And again, that could be for so many reasons. And depending where you go as well, it's one of those things where some young people can't even get to the town centres to see what's going on. You know, it's as crazy as that. So I feel like that plays a part. I feel like there are things going on, like I saw the whole the Youthful City stuff as well. You know, there's a lot going on, but again, it's just about how that's being, you know, put out there for young people to see. You know, and I think that's what I'll say. I think majority of them obviously know what's going on, but they don't really know what it is and what that entails for them as well. What opportunities are there for them? What's that gonna be like for them this year? What changes? What opportunities the City of Culture kind of bring about for them?
Thank you. Nyasha said, great hearing from you, John. Thanks for your insights. What advice would you give to artists looking to work within education like yourself? What contacts do we need and how do we connect with the decision makers?
Yeah, so I'll say definitely master your craft and, you know, tailor your craft towards the particular age group that you want to reach as well. And, you know, I'll always say if it's, you know, I don't know, secondary school age or stage, start with probably where you've attended school or, you know, a school near you in that sense, and start there, or start with the police, or just depending what issue it is you want to tackle, of course. And again, you can start with family hubs as well in different places and see what works need to be, you know, to be done there. Youth clubs to see what you can offer in terms of maybe, you know, if it's poetry, teaching young people how to write, how to express themselves. If it's music, you know, whether it's the production side, you know, where can you take your gift to and, you know, help out. So I would say, you know, first of all, just start on a voluntary basis and just see where they need you and just be there, you know, be ready, be committed, and then just kind of see where your craft will fit into the grand scheme of things, you know.
Thank you. Laura said, what challenges and triumphs have you faced as a leader in the city from a minoritized background?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I'll start with the triumphs. The triumphs have been, you know, being able to generate, you know, authentic relationships with young people, whereby, you know, it's almost like you're taking on siblings rather than just people that you work with, you know, generating relationships with other organizations as well and seeing where, you know, you can be a helping hand and vice versa. I think those are the triumphs, and just seeing change in young people. I mean, there's sessions we've held in certain schools where, you know, kids will literally turn up early for these sessions, like 10, 15 minutes early for these sessions, and it's everything that they look forward to, you know, in a week, is being there in those sessions. And then, you know, missing those sessions kind of affect them as well, and, you know, how they behave in other classes. So, you know, you're seeing that, and it shows the triumph in the impact of the work that we do. The downside of it, I would say, wow, the downside. Let me just see. Probably having to work twice as hard to kind of get an opportunity to do what we do. In all honesty, again, I don't wear a suit and tie in that sense. I'm always in my t-shirt and jeans and, you know, joggers or whatever it is. So having to kind of work twice as hard to sit down and have meetings and kind of how can I put it? Kind of try to eliminate the stereotypes that come with being dressed a certain way and being taken seriously in that sense, I'll say as well. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Anybody else got a question for John before I ask? Yes, Marius.
Hey John, that was really inspiring. So
Thank you, Marius. Yeah.
I've actually worked with a lot of young people as well, but more on individual cases rather than a group, because I feel like my work it's more qualitative when I work with the kids individually. I've been a break dancer for like 15 years.
Nice.
So I've taken one kid from Coventry, and I taught him the skills. I taught him how to travel, go competitions and everything, and he got really good. And he was from a minority background, from a poor area of Coventry. So he really reached a really good level. He was really talented. He was one of the best kids in UK in breaking.
Wow.
But when he was going home, basically his father was heavily involved in drugs and heavily involved in gangs and things like that. So it was really hard for me to keep him on track. Like, he was coming training, he was really dedicated, but he got so good that he was winning everything. So then he kind of lost the passion for it, and he was going back home, and he was surrounded by that world. So one time he came session with me, and he had one of the ankle tags. And I was like, man, what happened? Like, what's happened? It's like, oh, I've been blamed for something I didn't do in a park, blah, blah, blah. And I can't, basically this is my last session with you, because if I come to train with you, if like a rival gang sees me here, you're in trouble as well, So, that really, like, I was in shock when I heard that. So, and then he kind of, obviously I lost him, like he went astray, and I lost touch with him and everything. Wow. And that really like impacted me, so it's like I blame myself, because I feel like I didn't do enough for him. So like, I don't know if you would have an advice for kids like that, because obviously you're doing your work, you're doing everything you can, but then when they go home and they're surrounded by that kind of world, like, how do you proceed from there? I mean, like, it's a hard question, because I've been trying to think about it for a long time, and I'm trying that not to happen again, because obviously, like, you're trying to work with kids and you try to help them as much as you can, and seeing that is like kind of impactful. It's like, is your work worth it? If these things keep happening, like, how do you get over that?
Yeah, that's yeah, Marius, that's a really strong one, and that does happen. That really does happen. I feel like from my own personal experiences, I was like that kid, and what happened was, my mentor had to sit me down and really kind of give me the outcome, because one thing that really happens is, you can have kids who are very, very gifted, and it's not enough. That the guidance comes with understanding the consequences of being part of something that's detrimental to your future. So for me, when my mentor, he used to run a studio, and he opened that space, and he said, every day after school, once you finish school, because he knew that if I wasn't gonna go home, there was no one at home. So so he knew that I need to create something that this person can spend time here until somebody came home. So so being there, he would share, like, okay, these are the consequences of this. So if you go to prison, say for example, for 10 years, by the time you come out, this is going to happen, all this kind of stuff. And say for example, you do make it and you do this, all the lives that you could change from doing this. And it's just having that information to then weigh out the options of the pros and cons. Then you can make that choice. I feel like every young person has a choice, but sometimes it's whose voice are they listening to more, and that's the part. Because once my mentor and people around me who really cared for me kind of, shared their input, whatever was out there, right, was being minimized slowly and steadily, and that's what tends to happen. But the difference that we have in their generation is, we've got, because Coventry's so small and you've got these little postcode sort of disputes, right? So you get really good young people who are really focused and who really hearing what you're saying and really want to do well. But because of their circumstances and their surroundings, there's only so much they can do. So if, for example, we were holding like music sessions in town and certain kids from like the Bow Green area couldn't come to town as much as they wanted to, because they feared for their lives. And it's just about, how do we tackle that issue then, with that safety in mind, and that's where we are at the moment, because it's a different ball game now, and I feel like that's where things need to, that's where we need to tackle. And again, checking up on them as much as you can do, and keep refreshing their mind with something new and something encouraging and something edifying, just keep telling them how good they are, what they can do, and the possibilities of what could be if they continue utilizing their gifts. And at the end of it, it's really them that will make the choice, but it's just about ensuring that you've given it your all. You've done everything that you can do, and whatever choice that they make is, again, it's them, but also understanding that sometimes the environment isn't conducive to, fluorescent dreams in that sense. So yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a really, really tough one.
No, thank you. That was really inspiring. I'm thinking of maybe creating better programs as well. Like, how do I make those programs more sustainable for the future? Like if a kid reaches that level and then kind of loses passion, like how do I keep him still on track? So this is really helpful. Like you say, you have to go in the middle of it and kind of try to sort it from the foundation up rather than filter things out. So it's really good. Thanks
yeah, it's definitely, Marius, definitely. We should definitely connect, man. I love breakdancing. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have a question for John? Tyler, are you there?
Hi, I'm so sorry. Hi, John. Hope you're well. I hope everyone's well as well. Sorry, I can't put my camera on. My phone's working. It's moving mad. But I want to say, John, what are the qualities to be a leader?
Oh, that's a good one, man. That's a really good question. First of all, I would say, integrity. Integrity. Being, having integrity for yourself, being committed to the course, and a vision. So commitment, integrity, vision, and I feel like having these things will help and will impact the people that you work with, because you can have really great ideas as a leader. And I feel like everyone has leadership in them. It's just about we get leadership wrong. We always seem to think leadership is leading people, or is being like the boss. But leadership, first of all, leadership is understanding what you have to give out first. So whether you're gifted in, I don't know, speaking, so how are you going to utilize speaking for people who are who are voiceless? Whether it's being great at business, how are you going to utilize that gift into ensuring that people are you've started your own business maybe, and you're hiring people. So it's about leadership stems from really governing your gift and mastering it to the point where it's a blessing to other people. So that's where it stems from. And from there on, you're committed to the course, and after being committed to the course, you have integrity with the reason why you've started that particular thing. So that's what I'll say makes a true leader. It's nothing to do with being a boss and all this kind of stuff, but it's about, you have passion, you're committed, and you have integrity for your vision and the people that work alongside you.
Hi, Josh. It's a battle of the orange.
Does that help, bro? Yeah.
It's a battle of orange today.
Oh, nice. Hey, John. How you doing?
Yeah, that's it. Come on, Josh. Yes.
I've got a question from Melissa. I wondered if there's anything you want to support in your program, skills, resources, opportunity. Basically, how can people help help you with base, basically?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people to help out. If you have a gift in, in spoken word poetry, come and help us. If you have a gift in, again, working with young people, come and help us. If you have a gift in social media and working in social media, come and help us. Website designing, we're always in need. You just reach out and, let us know what you can do. And yeah, there's always room.
I'm gonna hit you up about the social media one, John.
Oh, please do. Yes.
I had a question as well. One thing that I wanted to ask is, from personal experience, sometimes like I've worked with a lot of young people and done a lot of mentoring, and I love it, and I love the experience so much. But I guess, it's a little bit different from Maris's perspective, but like, how do you deal with like your own kind of like well-being and mental health when doing that? Because I found that sometimes when I was in those experiences and almost seeing a reflection of myself when I was younger, that can be really difficult to deal with and difficult to manage and navigate. And quite literally that yes, the advice that you give it's valid and they can listen to it, but you also know that their circumstances might not allow them to heed that advice. So how do you sort of deal with that kind of like inner turmoil, but also take care of your well-being when doing that and mentoring these young people?
I feel like it's firstly understanding that, it's like that saying, you could take a horse too, but you can't make it drink. And you can only give so much, you can only give so much. You can only empty out yourself to a certain extent. And really, I feel like sometimes you can even touch just one person in a room full of hundreds, but it's about knowing that, whatever or whomever I've touched, that's it. I'm not really, you can't control who will relate to you and who wouldn't, or who would take your information and who's not going to. But I feel like being able to kind of get away from the stuff that you hear, sometimes the disappointing stuff or the discouraging stuff, or even like the tough stuff that young people are going through at home in their environment and wherever it is having time to meditate and really refill yourself, replenish yourself, replenish your spirit, replenish your soul, because you can't give what you don't have. If you're discouraged, if you're defeated, you can't really just go out there and be like, yes, guys, people will sense it anyways. As a Christian, I always take time to, whether it's reading the word, prayer, just replenishing my spirit and my soul, just before, if I feel diminished, or if I feel like, this is getting on top of me, because the best thing we can do as mentors and, as people who are there for young people is to ensure that we're giving 110%, and in everything that we do. So for them. So, yeah, so we can't do that if we're not mentally there, So I would say definitely, the mental aspect is an important part, to take some time away just to refill yourself. Yeah, 100%.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
How have you managed to adapt around the COVID situation, like getting in touch with like your I say kids, but they're not kids, young adults?
Yeah. So yeah, it's been tough. It's been really, really tough. Just before this lockdown, we were in schools and we were doing stuff, and we had a core of young people that we were working with. And obviously with this lockdown again, it's just been difficult, with schools being closed, and it's just been very heavy. So a lot of work has been online, Zoom sessions, but again, it's difficult. Not everyone has the right gadgets to do Zoom, and the young people that we really want to kind of cater to or cater for, some of them can't, haven't got these gadgets. So it's just about, it's about trying to reach out the best way we can. We did online videos, the first lockdown, just to kind of, releasing YouTube videos to keep young people motivated and to keep pushing them. So there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do. I feel like the blessing of social media kind of allows us to put stuff out there, but aside from that, it's just really waiting and seeing when all this stuff ceases, then we can kind of go back to face-to-face interaction.
Thank you. I know an organisation that gives tablets out. I'm not sure of the situation at the moment, but I'll give you the link.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
My question for you, John, is where do you see the city in 5 to 10 years' time? Like, what do you envision for Coventry as a city in terms for young people? In 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I feel it's going to be, Coventry will be definitely a beautiful place for young people in terms of opportunities. We've always been a city that's just been different, you know, it's very different. And it's been one of those cities where, like, oh, you live in Coventry, oh my gosh, what's that about? But then things are changing, you know, things are changing. It's, I feel like in 5 to 10 years' time, there's going to be so many things and so many people and so many businesses that are going to come out from this city, which are going to change the world and change the UK in its entirety. We've already seen with what PA's doing, you know, receiving such an iconic award in such a small amount of time as well. We're seeing what Friday's doing with Tyler and, you know, so many other people as well, so many young people pursuing their gifts at such a young age and just changing the narrative in such a significant way. And I feel like, you know, especially for young people coming up now, you've got a visual sort of outline of what could be, you know, because sometimes they say you can only become what you can see, and you see so many young people doing great things. You got people who are starting, you know, clothing lines, they're doing really well, like Section. You've got musicians, you've got poets, you've got things that are coming out from the city which are really going to change things. So I feel like in 5 years' time, things are going to be different, you know, hopefully, you know, and I'm just hoping, like, you know, all this postcode stuff will come to an end, you know, definitely come to an end, and it will cease.
Welcome, Corey. You're on mute.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
Don't worry about it. You're here now.
Exactly.
That's all that matters.
Has anybody else got any questions for John?
Melissa looks like she's no.
No.
Sweet.
Sorry to have missed the first part. Can you just have a little recap? I know it'll be on record as well, but
yeah,
if there's time.
Quickly, for Corey and Becky's sake, tell them what you do in the city and your artistic.
And how amazing you are.
So tell them.
Yeah, Corey. So I'm John Bernard, and I'm a poet, rapper, entrepreneur as well. Founder of a social enterprise called Base. Base an acronym for Be a Change Everywhere. We work with young people in the city, work with the police, work with schools, other youth organizations with a similar mindset of being committed to working with young people. So yeah, that sort of thing.
Okay, nice.
Just to summarize it.
A lot then, not a lot.
Not a lot, just yeah, a tiny bit. Yeah, man.
All right, we'll catch up. I'll try and catch up, linking with you another time.
Definitely.
Yeah, we will share John's details. For anybody that wants to work with young people and learn more, we'll share John's details and his socials and everything and email. Tam?
Yes, Tam.
I've got another question. I know you mentioned like the fact that when Melissa asked the question about culture and young people and what they think of it, and one of the responses you were saying about, you know, we've got City of Culture going on, and, you know, we're making attempts to reach out, but a lot of people don't have a clue what it is. And a lot of people don't know what it is and how to get involved, or what culture even, what does culture mean? Like, even before coming into the cultural sector, I didn't know what culture was. Growing up, culture was completely different. I remember being in school and one of my teachers asking, like, oh, how can you guys not know this question? It's you know, a cultural question. I was like, I grew up with like Bollywood movies. I don't know what this is. Like, I've got no idea what you're on about. Like, I didn't know like anything about Shakespeare till I, did later on in my school life and going into university. And I went in, I didn't know what any of the books that everyone was talking about was. So how can we, that's a fact that's happening. So what are the ways that we as leaders, as people who work in the community, as people who want to kind of change that narrative and change that kind of system, what are the things that we can do, not only to reach out to young people, but also what can we do to those institutions that enforce this kind of prerequisite of you have to have a certain cultural knowledge, or culture has to be a certain type of way? So I guess it's like two-part question there.
Oh, yeah, I'll certainly say, I mean, in order to influence change, one thing that needs to happen is you need to have a seat at the table. So again, it's just about, branching out, and it all depending on what sort of gift that you have and what you want to put out there. So whatever that is to find a place where, you can have a seat at the table and have these conversations. I think one thing that I really enjoyed was, I was sitting and talking to the police, and, different from the PCSOs to all the way up, and them kind of seeing and having time to listen to see what needs changing, what can we do differently, stop and search, does that work, or what can we do as officers to engage young people. So having a seat at the table really helps to kind of try and change things, and for the powers that be, or the powers that can kind of alter and change and invoke and implement certain laws and regulations, they can have an opportunity to hear what we think about those things. And I think on a smaller scale is finding ways to reach out to that demographic of people that need to hear about what you want them to hear about, and finding ways and means which attract them as well. Things that are engaging, things that they might like, and kind of putting the medicine in the sweet sort of thing, and see that helps. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Chrissy, I wanted, John, I love that medicine in the sweet. I really like that expression. I was just thinking about the work that you were talking about earlier on, and the work at base, and you talked about identity, potential, legacy, and habits. And I wondered if you just talk a bit about, you described how those 4 categories help create shifts in life chances, I guess, and in choices that people are making. I wondered if you could just say something about those 4, unpack that model a little bit, and give us some examples of what the work is that happens across those 4 different strands.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, identity is firstly important, because you can't achieve anything without understanding who you are and what you have to give. We use this analogy of the seed first and foremost. So say, for example, you've got a mango seed, right? And everything in that mango seed is there for that mango seed to become a mango tree bearing mango fruits, basically. But what needs to happen is that mango seed needs to be planted into, fertile soil. And not only that, somebody needs to water that mango seed for it to grow properly. So that the seed can be seen as identity, what you have, what's within you, and the potential could be that mango seed bearing mango fruit. And the whole journey of habits is cultivating that particular seed for it to grow and flourish as it should be. And the legacy behind that particular, if I'm losing you, forgive me. yeah. And the legacy behind it is no tree eats its own fruit. It's other people that will enjoy that particular fruit. So when you look at it as a human being, as a person, and say, for example, myself, I'm cultivating these gifts, I'm cultivating my gift of poetry and speaking, wherever it is, and it's not going to be myself that might benefit from it, but somebody might hear what I say and might take on board, and that might alter their life completely, and that might be the legacy that I leave behind. Somebody's heard me speak, or somebody's heard my work, has been in my workshops, and that's changed their lives, and from there on, they've gone to change somebody else's life just by being there in that moment. So, and that's how we see it. And the lack of understanding your identity can cause you to do a lot of stupid stuff, and the lack of understanding your potential and what you have to give, again, can cause you to dabble into so many things. You can be a jack of all trades, but you haven't mastered anything that's really substantial. And one of my mentors said something that was really great. My mentor told me, every time, if you look at people that have achieved great things, There've always been people who have been highly focused on mastering at least one thing. You know, if you say Michael Jordan, first thing that's going to come to your mind would be, you know, basketball. If you talk about Steve Jobs, the first thing that's going to come into your mind would be innovator, or, you know, something along those lines. And, you know, and being able to master one thing to a great level, to a great degree, then you could kind of, you know, work alongside everything else. So understanding that potential can help you maneuver through life. And one thing that he said to me was, when you know what you have to give, you know what you don't have to give. And when you know where you're going, you know where not to go, you know. So having these ideas in mind, you kind of learn that, okay, if I really want to do this, then certain places I can't be at. You know, if I really want to go here, then I really can't go there. If I know what I have to give, if this is who I am, then I can't compromise who I am. Yeah, so yeah.
Thanks so much. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before John leaves? Any final words for John? Any questions? Okay, John, thank you so much. That was amazing, very inspirational. And
oh, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. It's a pleasure. But yeah, let's all definitely connect. Yeah, definitely. Like, reach out. Let's keep in touch all.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Sorry I missed it.
Is that Corey?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Nah, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
We'll catch up though.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, and we'll definitely connect you with other people, and we'll, if you're happy to, we'll forward on your contact details and your socials and everything after the session as well, because I'm sure that there's people in here that would love to be back in touch, and their own work would probably, you know, you'd both inspire each other with some of the work that people in this group do as well. And thank you so much for coming today, and yeah, it's been great.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tam. Really appreciate you guys. Yeah, definitely. Let's connect. I want to hear your stories as well, guys. Let's connect. Let's inspire each other and continue to push. So yeah.
Thank you, John.
Guys. Appreciate it, Tyler, man. Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much. So I'm thinking, Chrissy, do you think we should take a break until 1:30, and then at 1:30, I know we're going to spend some time with Elle, aren't we?
Yeah.
Should we do that? Have a 15-minute chance to grab a cup of tea and perhaps a bite to eat.
Yes.
Amazing. Thanks so much, John. It's been epic.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
So Ellie is a producer and she's a freelance project manager, and she works in Foes Hill with the communities there. And I thought it'd be really lovely to hear Elle and how she got involved in community work and how that shaped her as a leader, and maybe helping us as well identify those marginalized voices that we don't hear from because no one reaches out. So first of all, Elle, if you can tell us what you do in the community and what groups that you work with.
Yeah, sure. Well, I also thank you. Thanks so much for asking me, because I really appreciate it. And yeah, I work in Foes Hill, and I'm based at Foes Hill Community Centre, where the social supermarket operates out of. So it's one of the food hubs for Feeding Coventry, and Feeding Coventry it's actually a very new charity that was set up in 2017, and it was instigated by the guy who led the food bank, the applications to the food banks in Coventry, and it's kind of there to recognise that food poverty is a really massive issue in the city, and probably one that most people don't see. It's very hidden, and one of the real reasons for it is because food, as a proportion of your household budget, is one of the things that will go quickly in favour of something else. So for example, like if you need to pay for your electricity, you will cut back on your food shopping, because it's one of the most flexible bits of your budget. And I think when the food bank was established, you know, what people realised is that the demand was enormous, and it didn't solve a problem. It just they just couldn't fulfil the need like quickly enough. And so the social supermarket was set up as a way of trying to better understand some of the nature of food poverty that happens in the city. And rather than being just a solution, being, you know, like a transaction of you come to us and we will give you food for free, it being located out of the community centre and on a slightly different model was like the opportunity to really sort of like better engage with people about the multiple and complex issues that sort of manifest themselves in that way. So so the social supermarket is it operates, it looks a bit like a farm shop or like a community shop within the community centre, and they're currently operating on a delivery model and also appointments only because of COVID. But in the future, the best case scenario is that we open like a shop and people come in and they can have, you know, a bag of groceries that covers like every nutritional food group, is fresh as well as tinned, is fruit and vegetable as well as frozen things. It covers the whole sort of requirements of your household needs. And the bag is currently £4. And the value of the food that's in it is probably more like between 15 and 20. So we're operating primarily as a redistributor of food that is donated through Fair Share. But again, like the ambition is to network with local producers and local food growers so that we're kind of creating this sort of like virtuous circle within the city, whereby we are, you know, we're distributing excess vegetables that come from allotments, and we are growing food, you know, in our own sort of green spaces, and we're encouraging people who come into the centre to also get involved in those spaces. So in terms of the groups that I work with, you know, the main sort of you know, the people who come into the community centre are, well, they're local to Fowshill and Radford and Holbrooks, which is like, that's where I live as well. So I live in the northeast of the city. I live like just at the top of the Fowshill Road, and I have done for 20 years. So I do feel like this is my neighbourhood, and the people who I work with have got like really complicated needs, but that sort of transcend across cultural divides. So we see like a real broad spectrum of people in terms of like age ranges, gender, ethnicity. It affects so many different people and for so many different reasons. And you know, the thing that kind of connects everyone, and the thing that really is like my sort of driving passion, I suppose, is that food connects people. It can connect people on a joyous level. So, you know, when we kind of think of home and think of good memories, think of the smell of your favorite dinner, and you know, we're trying to bring that kind of like the joy of food, rather than it being an emergency provision, bringing the joy and the community of food sort of like back to people who are experiencing it as a real barrier and a real difficulty at the moment. And I've been with Feeding Coventry for a couple of years now, but I've been working in the third sector in the city for about six years now. And previously I was with a charity called Kairos, which just worked specifically with women who are experiencing, you know, multiple and complex needs. So I've always really worked with people who are kind of manifesting a problem, but understanding that the problem is not the presenting problem. It's like it's the tip of the iceberg, and it's everything else that requires the sort of, you know, the wraparound support and compassion that comes with, you know, working in the third sector. So yeah, they're the sort of groups that I work with, and you know, my my background work-wise is as a project manager. So I used to manage sort of like very large-scale environmental improvement schemes and construction programs. But you know, when I left school, I did my art foundation, and I've always, you know, I love music. I play the piano. I love photography and filming, and it was always, that was something that I never sort of pursued as a career path, so to speak. I think partly because it was quite discouraged in my household. But I think the experience of art and creating art with other people is so important, because that's a leveler in the same way that food is. It's one of those things that brings people together, and you can sort of enter into a different space that's not based on you know, any kind of like hierarchy of like job or academia or any kind of other privilege, but it's like, it's just the ability to create and express and sort of share stories that we can all like resonate with. And so, you know, with my producer hat on, one of the things that I really like to do is I like to kind of create spaces again for people to get involved in these kind of things. So whether that's kind of theatre workshops or short films, and even just like community storytelling and sharing. And yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. Oh, Chrissy, you're on mute.
Sorry. How did you get involved with community work?
Well, I was, as I say, but like my career kind of started off in the councils, actually, in the city council and the county council, sort of managing these big regeneration programs. And one of the places where I spent a lot of time was in Woodend and Manor Farm for the New Deal for Communities project. And for those of you who don't know, it was a number of years ago now. I think it started in 2001 and I joined in 2004. And it was, they had £54 million over a 10-year space of time in order to create transformational change within that community. And I felt very fortunate to be part of that. But one of the things that I sort of felt from it is that I was changing the environment by planting trees and, you know, putting in kind of nice rockeries and stuff. But I wasn't really impacting the people who lived there, and it wasn't having it didn't affect people's day-to-day lives. And I felt like I was kind of doing them and myself a bit of a disservice. And so I started volunteering, and I started volunteering at Kairos with the women's groups there, because that was something that I felt very passionate about. And I think that was like hugely eye-opening to me, because it took me out of that position of being like, you know, as the project manager, you're sort of in control of all of these different activities, you know, budgets and workshops and managing things and making sure things happen and getting the paperwork right and the admin and, you know, calling people and asking for things. And then all of a sudden, when you're sat in a room with women who are like, haven't eaten for 2 days, have a heroin problem, you know, have recently experienced a domestic violence situation, etc., and you're just called upon to make a cup of tea and to sit down and to listen, that is a very humbling, and that's an experience that you can't kind of replicate, and it sort of, it puts sharply into focus like the skills that you think that you have. Because you can be the most fantastic organizer, but if you don't understand people and you can't listen to them and you can't show compassion and you can't really engage with them, then like, what is the point of doing all of your regeneration programs? And like from there, to be honest, you know, my experiences with volunteering I just found so like enriching on a personal level that it was something that I made a commitment to sort of follow through with. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I quit my job with the council, and I went to go and work for Kairos on like a consultancy basis to support them with their sort of long-term plans and sustainability, and kind of like marry up my project management skills with my desire to support that work, which I felt was really important.
Thank you. I wanted to also ask you, like, how has knowing your city helped you as an artist shape your work? So in terms of like your film and as a producer as well.
That's a really interesting question. I think I have like, I've got quite a passion for like what I would call like psychogeography. So like the feeling and the stories that are sort of like rooted in a place. And the community centre has actually been like very inspiring for that reason, because you know, Feeding Coventry took on that building as a means to create provision for people. But actually, when you walk through the door and you go into the back room, there's a box full of photographs that go back to the 1950s. And that community centre has always been a community centre. And there's pictures of, you know, male voice choirs from the colliery up the road. There's pictures of like, you know, boxing with young people. There's older ladies doing sewing. There's like mechanic groups, and there's these just incredible photographs of ranges of people like all through this time who've all passed through that community centre. And I went to an event last year and took some of those photographs with me. And there was I met a lady who lived further down the Fosel Road, and it was a picture from the 70s. And I was like, oh, I just brought these for interest. And she was like, I know that man. He lives down the road and he does that. And he's my brother's, you know, cousins, something or other. And like, there was just this great connection. And so all the people who've passed through the community centre have links and roots into the city, and it's all sort of like embedded in that building. And I think that has really, like, that really means a lot to me. And one of the, I guess the way that is kind of shaping my practice is that I want to reconnect people who are coming into the community centre with the history of the centre and sort of how it's always been, you know, rooted in that place. So through, you know, through storytelling and through, you know, taking photographs and maybe recreating some of the activities that were in there, I feel like there's some sort of golden thread that's running through, you know, from throughout history. And I think like people need to feel that connection with their home and their the heart of their community.
Thank you. The next question is, what advice would you give us to help us get to know our city and get involved?
I think that I couldn't recommend volunteering anywhere highly enough. I know that obviously I know a lot of people do, maybe everyone already does engage like with the community on some level. But I think really kind of listening to people's individual stories and trying to like remove any preconceptions and judgments about where that person comes from, what their background is, or what you think they need or want is really important. And you can only get that on the ground, I think. And I think it's the ability to kind of practice seeing people where they're at and meeting them there. And I think that as much as the stats and the data is interesting, I think it's got a limited value. I think to get into the heart of things, I think it's all about making connections and making like genuine connections and genuine friendships, and having like real, authentic, honest conversations with people. Like I really liked what you were saying, like Chrissy, about your spoken word stuff is all like really raw and authentic, and like that's why it resonates with people. Well, like you got to create the space to hear that, like in the community as well. Like it's such a bold thing to be able to do, and I think a lot of people don't do it because they don't feel safe enough to do it. And I think like if you're in a community setting, like allowing the listening and the appreciation of the story is everything.
Thank you so much. I've got a question from Melissa. So she said, looking at the data about Foes Hill, for example, it's one of the areas which people don't have much interaction for culture. As someone who's working on the ground, do you feel like this is correct? This is a correct finding?
No, I don't. Actually, I don't find that correct at all. I think people find it difficult to resonate with the word culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because what does that really mean? Because I know for a fact that there are groups down the Fossil Road who meet regularly, and dancing happens and collective singing happens, and there's it, like, to me it feels celebratory, because in my culture we don't have a lot of like big gatherings over food, but I think to certain people in other cultures that doesn't feel celebratory or like a cultural experience, because it's more it's just more accepted as part of the day-to-day. But for me, like, I just feel that kind of thing is so important, and it's definitely part of culture, and I think it's probably one of the things that like more kind of westernized, like white cultures and communities have perhaps lost a little bit, like our communal eating and gathering. So yeah, like I don't really think that Fossil lacks culture. I think it probably lacks some of the availability of outlet for culture. So like there used to be a number of cinemas down the road. There was like quite a big like Bollywood film history like to the road, and I don't know that that's there anymore. But I think probably through places like the community centre and the other sort of like bigger venues down the road, that's something that I'm sure we could work to facilitate and try and kind of reinvigorate.
Thank you. And then Melissa's next question was, also, are there any wants and needs of your community to get involved with arts and culture?
I'm so sorry, I didn't catch that. Let me just open the chat.
Yeah, can you see it?
No, I'm not far enough down. Hold on a moment.
It's okay.
Are there any wants and needs of your
Hopefully
community?
the dog might stop barking. Oh yeah. Yeah, so it's just like other people saying what they'd like to get involved with. I know you said about the history of the community centre, and there was some arts things that used to happen there. What sorts of things are you trying to recreate? What do people actually want to do and want to get involved with? Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, yes, it does make sense. And I would also say, this might sound conflicting to my previous statement, but it's not. I think in terms of like particularly art-based crafts and activities, I sometimes people don't know what they want to do until the opportunity is presented for them to be able to get involved and to start to do something. So like last year we got a little bit of money to start putting a spade in the ground in the grassed area at the back of the community centre, and that is now a community garden. And so that sort of stimulated some interest in gardening and in growing. But then as a part of that, people came, suddenly they had inspiration for ideas that we would, let's make some bunting to go up there. And then, like maybe could we have a mural? Could we start doing some painting? Like, how are we going to create the fence around the pond? Well, maybe we could, recycle these materials. And it's been I've been so surprised and amazed by how creative people who have come into the space who don't have a creative background have been about facilitating the space, because they feel like they own it, and it's something that they are passionate and invested in. And so we've had upcycled furniture, and we had a film night there, and we've had like a barbecue, and all kinds of stuff has happened. And it's come from people's desire to be involved in the group and to be involved in something that they feel like they're part of. So I would say, I don't get people knocking down my door sort of asking for, like wool or fabric or things like that, but that desire is there, but it just needs to be kind of nurtured.
Thank you. Okay, so the floor is now open. Has anybody got any questions they would like to ask? Anybody?
Ellie, I wondered if I could ask you a bit more about, I suppose, the the sort of combination or the tension between seeing people as kind of collaborators, creative individuals whose connections and stories you're interested in enabling, and and supporting people in need, and how you find the relationship, how you establish that relationship that kind of doesn't feel benevolent, but feels kind of respectful, connected, and empathetic and respectful of people's own, lives and experiences. I wonder if you could say something about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's really interesting distinction to make, actually, because I think the extent to which people are suffering within their own experience does have a bearing on the level to which engagement is possible and on what basis. So, for example, when I worked at when I was at the drop-in at Kairos, where we had women who were very entrenched in their addictions and had very really serious, mental health and problems. The artwork was just there. We would put out kind of, cards and craft items, and we would sit, and you'd sometimes just get them to start talking, and then they would start, drawing or writing, and then that then allows for a further conversation to be had, while their mind is otherwise occupied in something that's quite therapeutic. And that's a mechanism for supporting people. So on one hand, you've got kind of art as a channel for kind of opening up a connection so that you can support someone in their experience. But then I think when you've got people who are perhaps on a slightly more stable level, where they are experiencing struggles with, household bills and budgeting and, sort of family issues, but they're not chronic in that way, then at that point, I think that, it's much more possible to engage someone in something that's like a bit more long term, that they can then start to feel that they are part of and that they have an ownership with. And I just think it always comes back to that thing of like listening to people, like to where they're actually at, and not I feel like I kind of learned a long time ago, like not to be precious about the point at which people wish to engage and the extent to which they wish to engage. And I felt quite like it really, like Marius's story earlier really touched me about the guy who was really amazing at what he did, and then he kind of disappeared off the radar. That happens all the time. And but I think that you can't underestimate like the impact that like the true like a truly invested energy that you give to somebody else, like what the impact of that could be in the future. And you might never know, but I don't ever think that it's wasted.
Thank you. Anybody else got questions for Elle, Lee, why we're here?
I've actually got another one, actually.
Okay.
So I wanted to just think about kind of art as political, and like in the context of working with communities that have particular needs, as you've been describing. Like, of course, every community has needs, but you know, these are needs linked to survival and linked to baseline well-being, aren't they, often? And so I was thinking about like art as about self-expression, art is about community cohesion, art is about like storytelling and passing on, you know, surfacing and communicating stories of a community, but also thinking about shifting from kind of expressing myself to making change, and thinking about the role of art and culture as an enabler of change, as an enabler of political activism and action, and where that sits in your experience, and you know, perhaps more widely with other people in this group as well.
So sorry, just to get you right, do you mean what's my experience of art as the change maker within these communities?
Yeah, I probably asked about 7 questions and answered one or something as well, didn't I? Yeah, like I suppose it's about, do you see people using their engagement with arts and culture to make change, to articulate their experience in ways that connect with others and cause that sense that, you know, stuff needs to happen, additional investments needed, additional provisions needed, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's really, it's interesting. I've had experience with some people, I think particularly young people. Like I produced a short animation with some young women a couple of years ago, that was very sort of politicized, because they were primarily care leavers and had quite a lot of kind of fiery experience, like feelings that they wanted to express about their situation and their lack of opportunity, and that became very sort of political, and they wanted them, but inspiring as well, you know, they wanted to sort of like make this animation and get it all over social media and make sure that, you know, the change happened. But I think for the most part, for myself, I see the activity of coming together collectively and doing these things because we desire to do them, and because we feel benefit from the engagement. I kind of see that as a bit of an activistic activist activity in its own right. You know, the ability to be able to go down to the community centre and like eat a vegan meal with other people that's been prepared on site with stuff out of the garden, as opposed to going to spend £1 next door to get, and this is no disrespect to the shopkeepers there, but you know, the food offering within communities that experience the most poverty is horrendous. You know, you can get 6 chicken wings and some fries, like deep fried, for £1, £1.50, but you can't get something that tastes good. Like that's not okay. It's not good enough. And so the very fact that you can do that at the community centre, but the motivation isn't like I'm making a political statement. Like the motivation has to be like, you know, I'm going to make this food and I really love, you know, do you want to come and join me, and like let's sit down and like let's talk and let's eat together. And like that's activism for me. But it feels nicer. It feels like warmer and engaging, rather than, I sometimes feel like activism is like can sometimes be an exercise in conflict. It doesn't feel like that at the centre.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I've got a question. So, you know, with like growing up, I don't live in Faisal at the moment, but I've kind of like grown up in that area, and my parents still work there, and I'm there all the time, and you know, I've been in COF for a while. So I think being based in that area, and what are some of the things that you'd love to see from communities that are based there but don't necessarily engage with the community, or they do engage, but engage only with their own communities itself? So there is that element that I want to find out more about, and what I can encourage like my family to do or to receive as well. And then I guess branching out, what can other people do within their own communities that you'd like to see happen?
That's a really interesting question, because yeah, there is separation and divide still in the communities, which is mad, because we are very much sharing the same ethos and the same desire, although the motivation is just very slightly different. As in the religious context. And I would say that like Feeding Coventry, I think has also kind of like, it's come out of like a Christian, like not me personally, but you know, the instigation of it did have a certain element of like Christian foundation to it. And I would like to see, you know, our sharing of food and community as like crossing, like bridging that, bridging any sort of like, I don't think there is a divide there. I just think it's like a lack of opportunity and a lack of I just feel like some of that conversation hasn't happened, and I would really like it to. Like in my sort of, you know, in my kind of best vision, I think it would be amazing if we, you know, if we cooked for each other, almost in a bit of a, you know, come dine with me kind of way, you know, let's kind of visit each other's kitchens and learn and share stories of how we cook as well. And that's one of the really interesting things I wanted to do before lockdown started. Actually, I was working with a food artist who collected stories from women who'd escaped conflict, about their food preparation and, you know, their family and their life story, but it was all in the context of the recipe. And to be able to kind of recreate that food and that sort of engaging context, I think would just be amazing, because it would give so many different perspectives. And I think we'd really welcome that. One of the things that we're doing at the community centre, which I'm working on now, is that we're actually having a commercial kitchen installed, and we're opening up the space a little bit so that the cafe that will be there will be like a functioning you know, a functioning kitchen and cafe with a large hall attached to it. So that is, you know, hopefully when COVID has subsided, that is the thing that we really, really want to start doing, inviting people in and, you know, communal collective eating.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And it's definitely something that I guess it's what I can pass on to, you know, my parents get involved in community work, but do it in different ways and probably don't even know about feeding commentary. They don't know about, you know, like I know about the community centre, but I think I've ever had a conversation with them, and they have worked there for the past 20 years. You know, they go to that road every single day, and they are with that community every single day. They see people, like my mum can name the customers, you know, when they come into her shop and come out of the shop, if she'll see everyone on the street, she'll recognize them, and the Gurdwara, she'll, you know, go up to them and talk to them, but there are certain elements that she's just not, you know, doesn't know about. And I don't know if that's us not engaging one way or people not being able to engage another way, or maybe it's just both. So I think that this is really interesting.
I think it's totally both things. Like, obviously it's hard when you're setting up a charity. You have to be so like, there's so little money to go around, and the operational side of things, like the food activity, is so labor intensive. But you know, what we really need is, we need to get better at our like community connections and have people sort of on the ground, you know, building those relationships. And I think it works both ways. I mean, I know that, like, for myself, I've been into Gurdwaras and temples, like, with other people when I've been invited, and I've felt completely welcomed and like nourished, and I've had a lovely experience. But it's not something that I would have done on my own. Like, I wouldn't have made that bold step to kind of step inside and talk to people. And I'm sure that works both ways, you know? So I think maybe there's more work to be done.
Anybody else got any questions for Ellie to ask her or anything? I wanted to say, how do you see the City of Culture working with the kind of communities that you work with that do not, may not have access to what's going on? How do you think that they can bring them in? I think that's, for me, I feel like they're doing a really good job, but I feel like there are still communities that are being missed out when it comes to some of these community events that they put together. How do you think that can be resolved?
Well, I think that I think one of the problems is because they've got such a huge job on their hands. Often the organisation is sort of done from the focus of imagining people like themselves and how they're going to engage in the cultural activities that are put on. I think when you are trying to create something for a community that's disengaged or that has other priorities in their line of sight, it takes a lot longer. It takes a lot longer to like build up the any kind of enthusiasm for an event. And certainly if you try and like turn something around in a couple of weeks, like, you know, people have got like serious life like crises on their hands and don't have time to engage always over a period of time. So I think they could do with like a lot longer lead-in times to their activities. And I think that I mean, you know, I don't want to be too critical, but you know, Shanine said herself, like in the last meeting that we had, that they have become unwittingly like quite this sort of quite large hierarchical organisation. And I think, unfortunately, one of the things that goes with that is like this idea of efficiency and like being able to, you know, producing things that are large and of scale, with the output being numbers. But actually, that doesn't work well for people who are experiencing like life crises. Often people don't like big events, like they prefer to do something that's much smaller with people who they're familiar with in the space that they are familiar. And I think that there perhaps needs to be a little bit more concentrated effort in those niche, small, connected, intimate, you know, gigs and kind of creative experiences, rather than just all kind of like, you know, large festival work.
Thank you very much. I don't think there are any more questions. Anybody got anything to say, to any final words, anything? Yes, Laura. Laura, you still there?
Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, your work is amazing, because you are a practicing artist, but at the same time you have a lot of knowledge to do with, you know, the bigger organizations. You know, you've worked in the council, you know how to handle like projects with you know, centers like the center that you're running at Fossil Center right now. So I think but at the same time, your work has a lot of heart in it, and this understanding of working with people from the ground up, it's quite, you can just see it from the way you explain it, that it's quite intimate and personable to you. So thank you, really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. It is really personal to me. Yeah, it means a lot.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
And I really like what you said as a project manager. Sometimes when you have those management roles, you know, some people, even in, I'm not going to throw shade, but even in some like art organizations or organizations that say that they're for the people, they've got management that just sit in and don't do nothing, and just let the staff do everything, and you don't even know how to connect with the people that come in and out your doors. But for the fact that you know you're a project manager, but you still put time to go into the community and give your all to people, is really, really what leadership for me is really about. Because especially when you're working for organizations that are supposed to be about something, I feel like a lot of people forget it's not about you. It's about the people that you're trying to inspire, and it's about the lives that you're trying to change. And some people start off with that, and I feel like people lose that as soon as they become promoted or sit on the top positions, and you like never see them again.
100%.
It's like schools, like I remember some education systems where you barely see the head teacher. Like me and my sister laugh, we always say we never saw our head teacher unless she was telling us off, which is bad because we should see her, she should interact with us as students, but she only interacted with us unless we was like in trouble or we had a school assembly because she was appalled about something, and it's like, and then she's in her office again, and that's not leadership to me, because we never saw her. You know, she never turned up to anything that barely anything that we did in terms of events, because she was just cooped up in the office. But I think that's the kind of mentality that we want to change, and it's really nice to have you on here and seeing that and how you balance the two. So thank you so much, Ellie. It was really
thank you. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
I think Melissa's got a question as well in the chat box.
Okay, Melissa said, it's been really interesting, Ellie. Thank you for sharing your work, knowledge and passion. Is there anything you would like us leaders to consider about feeding Coventry? Could be ways to get involved or other things.
Thank you. I think that we're always interested in this. It's so hard because of COVID, because you know, obviously we're locked down right now, but when that comes to an end, like we really, really want to welcome people into the centre. And I think like one of the joys of having like an actual geographical base that's quite big is that, you know, the space to work from there, first of all. Like there is a huge gym at the back, which we've said we're gonna have a roller disco in as soon as we're out of lockdown. But you know, as a making space, as a performance space, it's awesome. And just kind of being in that environment then allows for, you know, connections to be made with the other community members who are there. The garden space is incredible as well. And I just think, like, you know, always think of us if you're planning something and, you know, you need a space that's got that kind of community vibe to it. Or you want somewhere where you can kind of eat together with people and have like a celebrate, you know, something that's kind of has a celebratory feel to it. You know, this is it's the place to do that. So yeah, if there's any kind of connections that you think of, like, please do, like, keep me posted, because yeah, the more connections the better.
Thank you so much. I think now we can have a break, say 10 minutes.
Sorry, was Marius,
Marius, did you? Yeah. Sorry, Marius, I didn't see you.
My question would have been similar to Melissa's, like, how do we get involved with our local community centers? Because to be honest, I've never been in a community center here, because back home we don't actually have community centers. I remember I sent an email like 2 or 3 years ago, but I didn't have a reply. So I didn't know what community centers have to offer, like our local ones. So hearing that from you is really interesting. I'm really going to try and, you know, reach out to the community, or try and attend events, or, you know, try to use the space. And especially if I can help those people with my art, you know, that's even better. So it sounds really great from what you're saying. So I'm a bit gutted I didn't do this earlier.
No, that would be awesome. I mean, like, you know, when we are open and up and running, because we're used as a venue, like there's so many different groups of people that are potentially there. So, you know, like supported family groups, like young people's activities, you know, things that are made available over the school holidays. Like, you know, we provide like the holiday hunger packs to families, and previously, like, we've included kind of drawing and craft stuff in there. And but, you know, when we're open again and we've got the opportunity for people to actually come through the doors, like, you know, we want to be providing activities, and like, what a better way to get involved. So yeah.
That's great. So would that be the best way, just walk in, or just to send a message, or to phone up, or what would be the best way to get in touch with your community?
With our community centre, I can put anybody who's would be interested in volunteering or doing any, or having any kind of connection with the centre, in touch with the operations manager, because she is like, she has the handle on what happens, like, on a day-to-day basis. So please feel free to, like, just email me, and perhaps, you know, maybe we could just have a discussion outside about the kind of thing that you can sort of like picture happening, and like how we might be able to kind of support that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'll definitely reach out.
Okay, cool.
Anybody else? Got anything? Okay, yeah, I think we could have a 10 minutes break, and then we can hear from Laura.
Awesome.
Thanks
Ellie.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ellie. we're going to have is Laura, and Laura is the creative director of Morocco, and she's also an artist as well. And yeah, and she's really built a good name for herself in the city, and she's done amazing work and really helped a lot of people. And Laura is my mentor as well, so she's really put a lot of time into my creative practice in the past 3 years, and she's one of the reasons why I'm like this because of her and all the work and motivation she's put into me. She's like a second mum, basically. So Laura, let's take it away. So tell us what you do in the community and what groups do you work with?
Thank you for the amazing intro. Yeah, and yeah, good to be here. So what do I do in the community? Okay. So in the community, I support what we call the minoritized groups. It's from community groups. That's like the refugee centers, migrant communities, people who don't normally get the chance to be heard, but they have a lot of things to say, they have a lot to offer. So that is like community-based activities as well as the artists themselves. So artists who are practicing, already studying art, like at uni, or aspiring artists. And the focus that I have with the artists are migrant artists as well as marginalized groups. So the age range is quite huge. Now we have young and gifted. That's what Chrissy is leading. So that's starting from 11 years old upwards. The groups that, the main thing that I could say about the work that we do is using art as a vehicle for something positive to happen. So in terms of the positive that we are looking for is to see each other as human beings, first and foremost, and also connecting us in communities and as humans as well. Because unfortunately, the society that we are living in, as we all know, is put onto us a lot of labels, and it has divided us instead of bringing us together. So the way we see each other is quite biased in many ways, because it starts from school. And this is something we talk about with Chrissy quite a lot. It starts from school. When we are talking about, what happened with the slave trade, it's like already there's an introduction of Black people being minority, being under somewhere. There's nothing else out that the young person in that class, what are they thinking in their heads when they're looking at the other person, that other young person with Black skin? So what can we do from the ground up to challenge that? We will not solve everything, but we have to start from somewhere. So for me, from my own personal experience, I've seen art as such a strong tool that gives us that space, that platform to start up a conversation for something to happen. Yeah, quite passionate, very passionate about women, because I have, as a woman myself, I have a strong belief that we carry change in our wombs as women. And society has not been very fair to us. A lot of things come and try to knock us back. So I think being there for one another and supporting each other in whatever way that we can is quite important. So this is one of the things that we focus on within Mawoko. So like Chris is saying that I'm CEO of Mawoko, it wasn't a plan of mine to be a CEO of something. It just is something that found me rather than me looking for it. My experience is the one that really brought me into becoming a founder of an organization called Mawoko. And Mawoko, as the name itself, is from Shona, and this is Zimbabwe. Shona, it's my mother tongue. I'm originally from Zimbabwe. It means our hands. So what we say back home is when a child is born, they are born with gifts and talents in their hands. When they come out of their mother's womb, they come out with their fist like that. So what they're doing is they're holding their gifts and talents. And as they're moving about in the world, they are opening their hands slowly and they're giving their gifts in whatever small way, big, it doesn't matter. But there's something that we are all holding that we can give out. So when they go and leave, they've opened their hands, they've come, they've given, and that's it. So that is such a core that we have as an organization to say, we all have something to give. How are we going to inspire each other to give that thing that we have? So for me, because of my experience, it's using arts and my core beliefs. I'm a Christian as well. It's such a foundation for what I do. It's such an inspiration. So that is something that I feed into my work.
Thank you, Laura. So how did you get involved with community work?
It started with me realizing that I'm a Black woman when I came to the UK, because I wasn't aware of this before. I realized that being sitting in a class whereby you are the only apparently Black person, and somebody comments and they're like, oh, how does it feel being the only Black person? But this is not something that you are thinking at that moment. It's not like it's the highlight of your life, if I may say, because that's not how I was raised. I was raised to actually understand the value that I have as a human being and the value that this person sitting next to me has as a human being, despite what they look like on the outside. So this is how it was kind of like little seeds that were like, oh, okay, so this is like the highlight. And then as you are going along, because when I furthered my studies in art in the UK, you're going along, you have plans and aspirations like, okay, when I am studying, because I studied applied arts at Cove Uni, and my plan was to become a huge name, a designer that makes these big accessories and to put my work on the catwalk. This is still part of my plan. However, actually knocking on the doors in Coventry was quite difficult for me on a personal level. And then realizing that, no, actually, I'm not the only one who is facing this challenge. There are other people. And then I realized that, no, it's not only migrants. It's to do with skin color. It's to do with the tone of your voice. It's to do with, your heritage. Where are you actually from? You are not British enough to be in this art scene. So that got me thinking, that really got me asking questions like, so how do we even make it? And what is the next generation going to look like in the art scene? So this is how it started. For me, it started as a problem. And I was looking for a solution in my own personal space as an artist. Where do I can't say where do I fit in, because how I wasn't raised in a way that I'm trying to fit in somewhere. I was raised in a way that I know that I have something to give. So what I didn't understand was, okay, I've got something to give. So how come these people can't see it? So I found it very hard to understand, because I come from a culture whereby when we come together as a team with different skills, something amazing happens. So that's where my quest, I would say like my quest started. It was the problem that I saw. And then as I saw this problem, it was like, oh, so how do I find these opportunities? The amount of emails, the amount of emails, phone calls that I would write to different institutions that I now work with. It's amazing. It's like, oh my gosh, am I even visible? Yeah. So that's how it started off as a problem, I would say, and a way to find a solution, and that drive to say, okay, one, the women who were in situations like myself, because I was going through personal situations that I can say, like, I'm comfortable to say, like, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. So I'm going through domestic abuse. I'm a migrant woman. I am, I left my family back home. My mind is occupied in that space as to, I've got a young daughter that I left back home. I need to finish my degree. Financially, I'm not stable. The government does not support me because of my status. But the thing is, I've got something to give, and I do have a voice. So what about someone who is in another mental state of mind, who they survive in a system that is not acknowledging these circumstances? If I can give an example of like that I find that really changed my life in 2007. I was about to finish my degree, and I was going about looking for somewhere like a home to house me as someone who's going through domestic abuse. And yeah, it was a process for me to even come to a place of wanting to go and talk to someone. It's all a process. All of that is a process. The guts to actually go and say, oh, this is what's happening to me. So then I went to a few spaces, and then I found one that said, oh yeah, we can actually help you. We help women like that, because advertisements are always there, isn't it? Like, are you going through domestic abuse? Come, yes, we are here to help you. I'm like, okay, I'm in the right country for this. So then I went there, and they said, oh yes, we can help you. But when they asked me about my status, I wasn't receiving public funds. So they said, oh, sorry, we can't help you. So I had to go back to the problem. So for me, that was such out of a lot of things that had been happening, that was a turning point for me, that I thought one day, I'm going to support women. one day I am going to support someone who is in the same situation as me, because this is not human. How many women are out there going through the same situation and more? So for me that year, it was a turning point where I sat down and I wrote some things to myself that I wanted to do. Yeah. So then it grew, it started with women. I would say my journey started with women, the passion for women. And then it moved on as a mother, it moved on to the younger generation, where you start to think, how is that impacting the same situations? How are they impacting the younger generation? That's how it developed.
Thank you, Laura. So what helped you understand Coventry as a city and help you understand where to find those marginalized voices that needed your help and support?
So I had someone that I call like my my adopted mother. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So she's originally from Zimbabwe, like myself. And she, whilst I was doing my studies, she kept saying to me, Laura, there's something that you have that you can give to communities. And I resisted for 3 years. I said, my plan is to get creative, go on the runway, showcase my pieces. That's my plan. Let me be. But up to today, I thank God that she persisted. She didn't stop. She was on my case for 3 years. And I'm not talking about like breaks of like maybe 6 months later. No, she will be on my case like most of because she had such a heart for communities. So there's something that she saw. And then one day I just gave in. I was like, okay. So as part of my placement, I was like, okay, so maybe I could do like community somewhere in Coventry. I then joined CRMC, Coventry Refugee and Migrant Center. That's where I did my first placement. Again, that was back in 2007. And my first workshop, I was leading an arts class, supporting that with women, and that was it. I never turned back. I knew it. I just knew that I was born to do this. So when that happened, that's how I started to actually to get to know the city. Because in these workshops, different women from different backgrounds came. And we eventually started like a community group that was called Imani, and we were based in Hillfields. I'm saying this with such a big smile on my face because it was an amazing experience whereby women came from all backgrounds. Again, the women's things, it was quite open. Women from all backgrounds would come and we just sit there. We are doing art activities, but actually it was a showcase of the power of art and connectivity and mental health and healing and a lot of togetherness and inspiration. Because out of these groups came women who thought that, okay, I've got too much of an accent. I can't practice to be a nurse anymore. I'm not a good mother. I am going through domestic abuse and, you know, they feel alone. So all sorts of different situations came out of this whereby moms became better mothers. some women who had migrated to the UK and they were professionals in their country and they'd stopped wanting to be professionals. They would go out and start to look for jobs because they felt that they can. So it was quite an experience. That's how I got to know Coventry. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, how long does it take for a person to feel at home in Coventry? Why is it that like someone who has been here for 40 years still feel like they're not at home? So within these conversations, the workshops brought up questions that got me curious enough to then inquire and dig deeper, because you could see that these are deep-rooted issues that affect the next generation. Because some parents were now coming in and saying, okay, my children, because of how I am, they don't feel inspired to go further with their studies. So you see like a domino effect of just one bad example of what they call a hostile environment.
Thank you.
So I hope I've answered that question about connecting the community. Yeah.
So how has knowing your city helped you as an artist shape your work?
Okay, so because I have two sides. As a practicing artist, like in my own practice, it has helped me actually to get in touch even more with my roots. Because it's where I see the missing puzzles in Coventry. I think it makes me realize what I have in where I come from, if you see what I mean. So there is this thing that I think there's a saying for it, but there's this richness of culture that you realize when you're coming from the outside in. So you come in, you're like, oh wow, actually there's something that I had that I didn't realize from where I come from, but actually there's something rich in this place as well. So it's like it connected the dots for me, and actually made me value my culture. It also made me value where I am in Coventry. And it also helped me to understand who I am as an artist and my practice. So all of it, I feel that it's rooted in how I was raised, how I see my own perception of life, but also I think the ability to sit down and to people, the ability to sit down, talk to people, hear what they're saying, absorb, and understand that whatever the color, the person's skin, white, black, brown, wherever they're from, they are human. It is so valuable. I think one of the speakers said this is very valuable, because that is the key that really feeds into our understanding of where we are and as creatives. I'll say that's really as a creative. And as a CEO of Mawoko, I had to go back to the question again, and what happens to help us to get to know your city? As an organization and someone who is reaching out to a lot of people, I would say like it's the same thing, the ability to see that we are all human and to understand that whatever background other person is coming from, there is something in there that will add on and enrich the other culture, you see? Because I always say like we were made with different DNA for a reason, with different fingerprints for a reason. We are a connecting puzzle that if only we could just connect and understand each other, would be so powerful that it will blow our minds off. But unfortunately, there's an enemy, and that enemy is the one that comes in and try to really destroy the power of communication.
Yeah, 100. I agree.
Because there's so much power in oneness. Oneness can change the world. It breaks down boundaries. And this is what we need. We need X-ray eyes. X-ray eyes to see beyond all this noise that's in front of us. And then when we do that, we'll be amazed at what we can achieve.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as well, because I do believe that that we was all created to be different. We're not robots. And I feel like the fact that everybody here has got a different culture, different background, different interests in life, I think it makes for beautiful conversation, because it stimulates the mind, the fact that we're all different. And if we was all built like robots, then we can only talk to each other for a certain amount of time. You know, the fact that we've been here speaking to each other for the past nearly 4 hours is because we're all so different. If we were all loving the same things, doing the same things, we'd probably have like be talking for like 30 seconds and then we'd be bored. So I think that's one thing I'm passionate about, and I think is just that sense of allowing people to be themselves and bring the authentic self to the table makes the world a unique place. But as you can see, the ones that are in charge don't see it the way we see it. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I like that. So what advice would you give us to help us get to know our city and get more involved with the communities that are around us?
It's seeing value in authenticity, seeing value in that person that you meet on the bus, seeing value in every conversation, capturing every nuance, every phrase, because there's something in there that is rich. There's no, I don't believe in like, it's just, you know, this just happened. I really believe in that there's no like chance things, you know. We've been brought together as the 15 for a reason. So what is there that we can tap in and really make it work? Make it work. What can we bring to the table as Ellie, your fingerprint? And how do we value that? Where do we pick? And I'll be like, you know, like hunger as well, that hunger to know, because there's never a time that we're going to know it all. And the most important thing that I always remind myself when I wake up, it's not about the name or where my name is appearing. I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve the people. We are here to serve each other. What is it that I can do for Maurice? What is it that I can do for Melissa. I'm not going to be able to do it all, but the heart to serve, I find it very useful.
Thank you very much. Quick, I will chuck in this one before I open the floor. Where do you see Coventry in 5 to 10 years' time, and what do you think we need to do in order to take the necessary steps to get there?
I think we need to have more people from different backgrounds, you know, a good mix of people from different backgrounds in big organizations, you know, decision makers. We don't have a good diverse. Anyway,
I agree.
We don't have enough.
We don't.
Diversity.
Say it, Laura.
It's not inclusive. It's not inclusive enough. So
high powers.
As Coventry, we shout a lot about diversity, inclusion, and we are really good at taking in refugees, asylum seekers, but where are they? On the decision tables, where are they? We don't see them. We are making things for them, but their voices are not in there.
Yeah.
So we really need that. We need to value, because there's this thing about understanding that, okay, we're talking about lived experience, you see, because lived experience is quite important. We talked about a bit of lived experience where John, I think, shared his lived experience. You see the value, but most of the time, you notice that with that lived experience, as wow as it is, as like amazing as it is, you see richness, you see that, but on the top level, it's not being taken seriously.
Yeah.
That's why we don't see the faces of those people in the decision makers. So we really need to work towards that, to advocate, to see a diversified Coventry within the decision makers.
Yeah. Thank you. That's really good. So now I'll open the floor for anyone that has questions for Laura. Ask away. Or type it in the group chat.
Chrissy, could I ask a question to Laura?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to kind of say how brilliant it's been to hear you talk today. It's been absolutely brilliant. Really appreciate the authenticity and power and the transparency of both your story and what you stand for. I think it's, you know, it's really powerful. I wondered if you could connect something for us, which is, I suppose, how could you make a connection for us between your calling, as we've heard it, and your own personal creative work as an artist?
Okay. So my personal creative journey was, I think if I can give an example of where it tended to be like the call became very intertwined with my creative practice, is when I finished my degree course at Cove Uni. I looked at because the time that I was going through like domestic abuse, and that is the same time that I was finishing my studies. So it was quite an intense period for me. And when I looked at my final collection, it spoke what about the woman that I'd become, it spoke to me. Like looking at it, it actually spoke to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I see this, I see the pain, I see the joy, I see there was a story that I even felt like, oh my gosh, I would want to take it further in my studies and do ABC. I had this whole big plan that I had about that specific collection. So that's when I began to tap into storytelling and connecting it with my childhood. I began to understand the power of storytelling. I began to understand the way people from Zimbabwe, this is now my culture, because I saw my, I'll say from when I can remember as a little child to when I was then at that moment in time as a woman. So there was a story that just unraveled itself, if I may say, at that point in my life. Then I went on a journey of then connecting it properly to the women that I become so passionate about, connecting it properly to the next generation, which is now the younger generation, like Chrissy. So their story became mine, those young people. Those women's stories became my stories. And these migrants, I took it on board so much that it became so personal to me. Like when I sat down to listen to that story, when they say like, but I don't think I can be the nurse that I was before. Like this is a woman sharing. And that became personal to me because I'm thinking, okay, this woman may be even in a space, she's going through something wherever she's coming from, right? And her confidence is so beaten because sometimes we'd have someone who is sharing something so personal from where they're coming from. Her confidence is so beaten. So I could relate to these areas of their lives, like whereby I am actually in that space at that time. I'm coming from a home because it took me a very long time to come out of this abusive relationship, even though I was seeking help. So I'm thinking I am in the same state. I can relate to this woman in different ways. She's got children that she's thinking of. She's carrying the next generation. She's going through this, but she's got a lot inside of her. So what can we do? What can I do to support her? So my journey is to start a very personal journey. It wasn't an option. Say like it became an organization as a formality. There's a call out that is, what are you? Who are you? What are you registered as? And everything else. But it's a personal journey. Because it became me, her children became my children. So when I'm serving, why I say I am serving, and that core is so intertwined to my woko, is so intertwined to my creative practice. Because when I'm making those body adornments, for me, that is a story of a woman who's journeying through something. That's what I'm seeing. I'm choosing the materials, I creating the story as I'm making and I'm weaving it, the story is coming out. So when I'm asked to separate it, I find it very difficult because it's all this one big chunky thing that organically developed as life. It's life in its mess, it's in its goodness, in its celebration, it's life.
Thank you for that, Laura. Thank you, Richard, for that question. And Corey, saying that was your question as well. Has anybody else got anything to ask Laura, guys?
How do you, Laura? Thank you so much for sharing. So powerful, so powerful. How do you manage all of this? Obviously, you're mothering, serving, creating, mentoring Chrissy, being on this leadership program. How are you? How do you find the energy to do this and everything else that you're doing?
It's not an easy thing, Corey, because sometimes there are times that I think when I jumped to actually when it became so intense in 2017, and that's when I fully jumped to say like, okay, this is it. This is my life. This is what I'm doing. Everything. I left everything. It's not been easy. I even asked myself that same question, like, what am I doing? But the thing that I know keeps me going is my faith, because I have so much belief that I found my calling, like what Richard is saying.
Yeah.
So that is something that just I can't, if Chrissy gives me a call and she's asking me something, I can't give myself like a quarter of myself to her, if I may say. It's like it's that passion. I just believe that the balancing of it is not always like, oh my gosh, I've got the balance now. I don't have the balance.
Yeah.
But I have the passion, and that is the thing that drives me, and the understanding that it's needed. Because when I look at what's going on in the world, I see that there's need for a voice somewhere. There's need for voices somewhere. And then I look at the younger generation, you see that there's a need for us to pull them up and say, yeah, I got you. So that is the only way I can manage. I don't manage it perfectly. And I like that idea that I don't manage it perfectly, because I believe that's life.
Yeah.
So the drive that drives me is the conviction that I have something to give, and I'm going to give it. And then I manage.
Yeah.
It's all on the thin.
Yeah, I also think that in terms of the organization, I think because I met Laura in 2017, 18, and I think in the past 3 years, like it's grown so much to the point like it's not Laura doing it on her own. So I think that's where the organizational balance comes in, because we've got quite a few new staff that have come in and then helping us out. And I think since then, Laura's been able to concentrate on her creative practice. So she's been able to do commissions outside of Morocco. Will come in and like taking the weight off her shoulders a bit. And even when she went away back home during the Christmas, like she came back and the organization was still alive. We were still keeping it going.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was so that was so amazing.
We were still there, like, yeah, we've been working on this, and this.
That was so amazing. And I think that's another realm of managing, when you've been working on your own for a long time and then you have a team.
Yeah.
That's another realm as well of like, okay, it's actually happening. Somebody is doing something somewhere. So that's really a blessing, and something that is like, I think in my head, I'm still digesting it. Like, wow, this is amazing. This is such a blessing, because we have a team.
People want to follow you. People want to learn from you, understand you, and take on board your work ethic and everything else. So, you know, that's a testament to you, your character.
Yeah.
And Coventry's lucky to have you settle here.
They are.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Corey.
Anybody else got questions for Laura or anything to say to Laura about her work or anything?
Laura, please email me. You're so powerful, so inspirational. I need to get you. You got some mad connections, mad future. Big up you.
Thanks, Tyler. Don't worry.
Thank you, Tyler.
We'll send that email as well. We are looking to work with, I think it's, we're looking to work with Fridays. We've been having these conversations behind the scenes.
Everyone here is so powerful, so inspirational. It's so great to connect, and it's beautiful. Beautiful story, Laura. You can see your.
Thank you, Tyler.
Anybody else? Yes, Ellie?
I feel like I'm not sure if I should ask this or not, but I'm going to just put it out there and just, not specifically a question for you, Laura, but I think maybe it's just more like a musing that I've been having for quite a long time. So there's been quite a number of criticisms of like food charity projects. They often emanate kind of out of churches, and they're often like quite white and middle class. And our, you know, certainly our board is quite reflective of that, as are a number of other charities that I've worked on as well. And there's always this like aspiration to, you know, hear everyone's voices, but actually it's not very often manifested into anything that makes any sense, or like there's not really I think like there's probably quite a lack of understanding about like how to actually go about making it a space that's welcoming and open and is inclusive for people. And I think part of it, from my personal observation, is like a lot to do with like the officiousness of like hierarchical organizations. So like at a board level, we'll have like, you know, in-depth, complex conversations about business. It's quite dry, it's not very interesting. And I think sometimes it's difficult to kind of make that correlation between like the strategic and like the actual manifestation of what we're doing on the ground. And so like my question or my musing is like, as someone who kind of sits within that sphere with some limited ability to be able to try and like make changes, like I don't like where do I start with trying to create space for people where it doesn't, like where it feels uncomfortable, and like there definitely needs to be some shift, and I don't know where to start with that.
Good question.
Yeah.
I think when you talk, are you talking about like in terms of like the food that you distribute, it not being as diverse as it needs to be to reach out to different communities? Is that what?
No, sorry, just to clarify, I think really what I'm saying is that at that very senior level, at like board level, so I'm going to give like a historic experience. It's easier. I was working at a previous charity where it was for women, and it was for women who were experiencing like multiple and like complex needs, including addiction, domestic violence, exploitation. But the majority of the board were middle-aged, very highly academically qualified white women, and it's like how do you create an inclusive service if you don't have the voices of your users and your recipients and your community like within that space? And like, how do you create space for people at a board level in a way that works for everybody and doesn't feel like that, you know, like what you were saying earlier, Richard, like being benevolent or like somehow kind of, you know, like it like that is like a charitable move in itself. Like, how do you create like an equality, like an equal space for people?
I think when it comes to charities and organizations that are like really white led, I think it's a need for the board to want to change, and I think they need to take in some consultancy from somebody who can relate to those people that they're trying to serve, because they see what you don't see, because they can try and do it, but it can't be done on their own. So it's kind of be like for example, if there's an organization trying to work with refugees and it's all white middle class, then people like Mwoko and the Refugee Center and Carag are the organizations that they should be taking consultancy from, people that have worked on the ground work, people that have lived experience, people that are able to connect with those people, because they will help you make sure that your space is diverse. I don't think it's something personally that they could just do on their own. They need to take in consultancy from somebody with that experience. And I think that's what a lot of our organizations need as well. Need consultancy. When they talk about diversity, you need the consultancy from Black and Asian artists that have been doing it for years. You need that help for them to help you shift your organization. And if they're willing to change and see that actually this is not working for us and we're trying to include people but they don't feel included, then the first steps will be taking consultancy from somebody with that lived experience, and also somebody that's able to work with women in that, from their marginalized voices, that can give in their 2 cents to be like, I think you should do it this way. And focus groups are another good thing as well. And I feel like another thing as leaders, if we want to work with people, we need to speak to people. Like opening a space where there's a focus group where people can come, and then you just not even control the conversation, let the conversation happen. And from that, you actually see changes that need to be made. Those are the 2 ways I would personally say. But yeah.
Thanks, Chrissy. That's really helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think what I can just add on what Chrissy said is bring in the, maybe not necessarily the clients, you know, because they would have past clients in their records, bring them into meetings, you know, you can start by bringing them into meetings, organizing meetings, and that way you might find like interest, and eventually you could possibly have someone who could be interested in being a board member, but encourage them. Like bringing them with understanding is always quite important, not just to say, come along, but it's kind of like understanding where they're at, bringing them in, then have a very bespoke way of supporting them, which sometimes can be difficult because of time and everything else. But how then do we have a real diversified body? Because a board can be diversified in a very tick box way as well. So how do we have the real one that is real? real. Yeah.
Real. That's what I'm after.
Yeah. So I think it's about creating relationships like that.
Yeah.
Authenticity as well. You know, you see the authenticity that comes through and creating that pathway that everyone's talked about, because it is about being able to share your story. I think we've all been able to share our story, which is why we're on this program, in a way that is authentic and feels right as leaders. And that's what's missing out in the real world, in a sense. You know, in some organizations, they're not telling their real story. They're just doing it. They're just living. And I think there is a massive opportunity for people to sit down, listen, take on board, have a conversation, and move forward with things. You know, I think at Positive Youth Foundation, they have a youth board. So the one or two of the trustees from the the main board will sit on that youth panel every now and then and share information. So it's a way to bring some of their team up through the ranks, giving them opportunities, giving them responsibilities, accountability. And I think that's another big work as part of that growth, as part of their journey, as part of their authentic self and story.
Yeah.
I really like I really like this conversation, and it feels like it relates, doesn't it, to some of the things that we've been hearing today, I think, as well. Like it's definitely durational, isn't it? It's about long-term relationships, not instant fixes when we're thinking about giving it opening up to be affected by others, not on our terms, but changing the terms in order that we're hearing a range of voices. So for me, that feels like it is about authenticity of intention. It's about durational work, like long term. It's about relationships, not transactions. It's about moving at the speed of trust. And, you know, I think, Ellie, you talked earlier about the time it takes for things to open up.
Yeah.
And it's about recognizing that those communities and individuals that we need to hear from aren't working to our agenda, we're working to theirs. So what pace do they need, and what do they need to see from us in order to feel able, you know, to believe in us, you know, or to believe in that conversation and the listening that we've been talking about. The other thing that really strikes me is something about going where that conversation's happening, you know. So our environment might be the hardest place for that voice to be heard, but hopefully it's being heard somewhere within a faith group, within a community of elders, within a community of youth, young people. And so there's somewhere probably where that voice is heard with authenticity, with clarity. And we might need to work like in those places to hear some things for us, rather than ask those people to be in our place, which is immediately alienating or diminishing or uncomfortable. But for me, it's about ultimately about pace, and that sense that we'll remain curious until you're ready. We'll keep demonstrating curiosity and interest and authentic support until you're ready, not at our pace but at yours. And I don't think very much of that is part of the normal process of kind of consulting or involving, because it's normally within a project timescale, or it's, you know, linking to a particular agenda, isn't it? Rather than being a lifelong commitment to, you know, understanding what the barriers are and then removing them, I suppose.
I also want to say, like, it's really well and good wanting to bring people into spaces and want to bring change, but it's not good enough when no one's listening, when they are being brought in. And it's, you know, you experience that many times where you go into a space. So for example, you know, working with, you know, I've seen boards work with care leavers, and they're like, oh, we'll have some care leavers on our board. Then they don't listen to them. Or when care leavers are asking, you know, for, you know, some changes to be implemented, they're saying, oh, that's not possible, we don't work without contractor, or that's not working. So the environment and the jargon's not explained, the process not explained. When you ask why the process is the way it is, they can't justify the reasons for that. So it's not just how do we create diversity, how do we bring people in, it's not just a tick box exercise that you can do. You have to be willing to want to make that change. You have to be willing to want to remove some people. Like if you've got people that aren't listening, they need to go. they need to go. There's only so much education that you can create in a board or in a space. But if there's no willingness to create a change, like, and it's all superficial, then that change isn't going to happen. Or when they're asking, you know, I just remember like asking students, you know, come in and, you know, we'll consult with you at X university. I went to Warwick, right? Loved the place. But I remember the amount of times they brought us in to consult on stuff and didn't listen when we were saying this is what we wanted. And that's at a basic level when they're serving students. So I feel like in boards and in changes, it's not just about let's do a diversity workshop, let's do this, let's do that. It's about let's remove some people, let's bring some people in, let's create spaces that we're actually listening rather than not listening and just doing it and putting faces. Because if you put me in a space of people are all white and I'm there, I'm going to stick out, and just because I'm there doesn't mean they're not necessarily going to listen to me. So it's doing things with purpose and with action and with a view to progress, not with a view just to seem superficial and for social media and whatever else.
Agree, Tam. They have to be willing to change, and they have to be willing to learn as well. The ones in charge.
I completely agree, and I really appreciate that, Tam, because I think like this is helping sort of clarify my thoughts. And I think one of the things that is in my mind is that I actually am quite, I have like a nervousness about bringing people into an environment that will not, like, I'm scared about what might happen, basically, because I've seen it. So I've seen it a number of times before. I've seen like failed youth boards or failed, or, you know, let's bring a service user in, and it's just like it's like if you're an empathetic person, it's so deeply uncomfortable to observe somebody being sort of like, you know, shipped in in order to try and kind of make this connection that's never going to work, because the people who are there, like, established in this structure, don't understand how, or perhaps have like an unwitting unwillingness to like to allow and to kind of be open. And yeah, it's difficult. But maybe the environment is important.
I mean, we can say that with multiple establishments, organizations, not just charities. I mean, you know, there are so many people that think they want change and see that everybody else is trying to make change, but are not necessarily ready for it, or not willing to make the change themselves, but just feel that they have to move with what, you know, the next establishment is, or the next organization is doing, just to feel part of it, but they don't really want to do it. And they're the worst ones, because they're not ready to change, and they may never be ready to change.
That's good. Any more questions for Laura, or anything else that people want to talk about while we're here?
I suppose it's a question for Laura and all of us, really. I suppose it's about how we join up, how we think about ourselves as a bit of a jigsaw puzzle across the city, with a variety of relationships and perspectives, a whole range of ways that we're connected, and but also complementary. And it's making me think about, I don't know, how we share, how we serve each other in some complementary way, with like what we know, who we know, how each of it feels like each of you can contribute to each other's journey, thinking about the city and who we know and who we're connected with and who we have trust with, and in some ways that relates to Ellie's question, doesn't it? Because sometimes there are gatekeepers who have trust, who might be able to enable voices to be heard, you know, in places that they haven't been before. So I guess it's a sort of a really nebulous question about how we join up more, or how we use what we're hearing from each other to inform all of our work.
Mm.
I would say, like, if we look at, there's something, Corey, that you introduced us to, was that a photo campaign? It was a photo portrait campaign.
Yeah, the
That was
commitment.
like the commitment. I was hopeful. It brought me to, you know, like to involve into it, because I'm interested and I'm in things to do, but I can't put myself on the mark of how passionate my older daughter is. She's more so, because of her and having a conversation about the commitment with her, that's what made me go and have a portrait with her about the commitment. So this is a cause that, like, I guess most of us, maybe not all of us, took part in. So I feel like that's such a good example. It's like we're talking about boards right now, diversified boards. And Ellie, you shared quite rightly about, you know, like that feeling of nervousness, like what's going to happen to the person because of past experience that you've seen. So it's kind of like picking a subject that is quite common maybe among us, and we root for that. We go for it. So maybe it doesn't have to be just one, but I'm just giving that one example of diversified boards. We really hone into the authenticity of it. How do we go about actually having an authentic board? And what sort of campaign can go behind this? So that's kind of like something that a subject that we are agreeing with, and we go for it. And I feel there's a sense of saving each other because there is interest in one specific area. And in this situation, I'm just giving the board as an example. Yeah.
I think in terms of connecting, I think in terms of connecting with each other and trying to see how we can work together as community. I think one thing is what I've realized, and I think I've had a conversation with Laura about it, is a lot of people want to see the same change, but everybody's always fighting about who's going to get the funding to make that change happen. And then when they do that, they refuse to collaborate with others. I'm a believer of collaborativity, and that's what I put in the leadership program when it came to my community. In terms of the community in Coventry, the Black community, I felt as if the African and Caribbean community, having conversations with both community and doing my best to, because I've got Caribbean friends all my life, that's all my friends had, and I'm an African woman and that's my background. And growing up with those people and be able to put our cultures together, even though it's a bit different, but there was some similarities, we was able to merge together, and that brought us together even in school to work together to make a change. So seeing that these communities didn't want to do that in Coventry, but they all had the same thing. They all wanted a cultural festival. They all wanted cultures to be celebrated, but nobody wanted to come together. And I think that's what I was saying to them. If we all come together, celebrate our cultures together, celebrate the Black community in Coventry together, we wouldn't have, don't forget about fighting for funding, but think about the one thing that we're thinking. And it's not about us, it's about the younger generation. Because if the younger generation can come together, no matter where they're from in the Black community, and make Black Lives Matter movement happen, why can't we come together and put this festival that we want for them? And I think that's one thing we have to put aside is pride, who's leading what, who's doing that. If we all have a goal, we all want to make a change, especially for the young children in our community, and we want them to have something that leaves them a legacy. It's work that we have to do together as a collective, forgetting all our past problems that we've had, forgetting how much funding we can get. If we come together, we probably might even get more funding together, but that's different brains, and we've done something that we've all wanted to achieve. But if we're all applying for the same thing, to do the same thing, who are they going to give it to? Probably nobody, because they're probably thinking, why don't they just team up and do it together? So I think that's one thing we need to do before we can ever connect the dots and do things collaboratively, is forget about your ego and your pride and just think about the legacy you want to achieve. That's what I've been trying to work with the two communities to bring together. It's hard, but hopefully we can get there. We can make it happen. But yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. That last thing, taking the ego out of the situation is key, because that's the one thing that holds you back, isn't it? It's that little bit of pride or your ego that stops you from that collaborative element. And we just need to take that out. But I think for us as a group, I think we've come so far, with what's going on pandemic wise, just collaborating through Zoom. We still don't really know each other. And I think, like you said, Rich, this is maybe one of those things that's over time. We just keep building, because it's extremely hard. I mean, we may not even meet up until when next in winter. So I mean, who knows? But I think it's just to keep going, and maybe we start to drop in the conversations as we start to go through this first period of the programs. Some of the ideas will start to then manifest a little bit more. We can start to look at the topics or themes that we really can go after, as a collective group. And then we can maybe move forward with a couple of ideas. I still think the idea, us continuing as a collective, as a group, as a force for change in Coventry, which can then bring through a next wave, is something that is legacy there. Because I think ultimately all of our projects and everything else are slightly on hold. They've been doing it in a different way, not the way that we really want to do them. So it is about taking our time, changing, rethinking, but in the right way, which is going to feel authentic to all 15 of us.
Yeah. 100%, I agree. Okay, so before we finish up, let me get my notes. We thought that it would be good to give ourselves some time to reflect, and think about what we've just discussed and what we've heard, and maybe put it together in a creative form. So whether you want to write a poem about how the session has made you feel, if you want to draw it, animate it, whatever. But that's what about today, and some words about today and their communities, and what are our thoughts, and then we can come back and share before we close up. So if you want to do that for, should we say 5 minutes, because it's like the time to close up, and then maybe put all of that into something creative, and then think about what we can take out from this session, and then we can discuss it after.
Cool.
So see you guys in 5 minutes time. Would you mind timing that, Richard or thank you.
Okay, our 5 minutes is up. That was quite quick, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, guys. Okay, so it's time to share. I'll go first, and then we can just people can just jump in after. So I just wrote. I don't know if it was a poem, but I think it was kind of like a declaration. So I wouldn't say it's a poem because it was rushed. But we serve the voiceless. We stand up for the oppressed. We lead with integrity and dignity. Put ourselves on the front line every day. We disrupt and reconstruct places that need cleaning up. We sweep corruption and welcome change. We are the change we want to see. We are cultural leaders. Thank you, guys. Anybody else who would like to share their reflection with the group?
I'll go if no one's going to jump in.
Okay, yeah, that's good. You go.
So I did a poem. So you want to speak on community, but what does that mean to you? Is it only through your specific lens? Does my perspective inform your view? You speak on others' participation as if you're aware of their struggle, but yet when you want collaboration, the meaning is mixed, mired, muddled. The first step to understanding my culture, the first move to perceiving the real me, is to stop with assumption, remove your presumption, come to me to explore my ID.
I like that. That was really good. I like that. Yeah, that was good. Richard said he thought of 5 words. It was serving, calling, connection, authenticity, and relationships, which I think those are very good words when you think about leading the community. So thank you, Richard. Anybody else want to share their reflection? Yes, Josh.
I was just doodling and kind of reflecting on what we've done. Like I was particularly inspired by the idea that a tree doesn't eat its own fruit, and that I don't know, it clicked some things together for me where I was thinking about how even if I like master my own practice, whether that's in animation or whether that's in personality typing or stuff like that, I'm not necessarily going to feel like it's ever done or complete or be like, oh, that's great because I'm the one who's practicing it. Like I won't receive the surprise wisdom that I've got from rehearsing it over and over again in my head. And I'll receive wisdom from speaking to other people and then just sharing my bits of wisdom with people as well. I was also really inspired by what Laura was saying about just asking the question, what can I do to serve? And it's, I don't know, it's something which I've been like thinking about in relation to everybody else on the program. But it's just not necessarily something I've communicated or put time aside to do yet. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a bit of a think, and I'll like, I don't know, put something out in Slack or message people by their email, just in terms of what I'm thinking of, how my animation practice could maybe benefit or help them. And but that's also on the understanding that it's not necessarily something that is going to happen, but it's a possibility which is out there, because we all have limited time and resources. And I was thinking actually, as I was drawing the bit in the middle, of all of these connection points and like our paths crossing over with each other, that this kind of project that we're imagining that we're going to do, which is going to play to all of our strengths, that project might not happen all at the same time. It might be something which is drip fed throughout this process, and there's no one big project, but there's these mini touch points of collaboration with each other, which reminded me of something that Ellie was saying about not being precious about the point at which you engage. So yeah, that's my reflections on today.
Thank you, Josh. So Laura put hers in. So she said, guts and all authenticity we can, we will, together as our raw, vulnerable. And then Tam said, my words are in, it's in her native language, and it's in Punjabi. So today made her think of community upbringing and these 3 phrases. Can you say them,
I'll
Tam?
just say it because it's not coming out on the chat and I'm trying
Okay.
but it's 3 phrases. It's called Nam Jabo, which means to meditate. But I guess more and more I'm learning that it means to take care of yourself and to take care of your mind and to take care of your well-being. And then there's Vandke Shakko, which means whatever you're going to eat, give it to others before you eat yourself. So it's this thing of share with others what you've got, and it will make your food taste better. And then Kirat Karo, in traditionally it means like sacrifice or doing good for others. But I guess it's this thing that I think Laura mentioned, like to serve without ego. And I thought those themes really came across, I guess, in my own upbringing, in my own community, and it was like magnified today.
Thank you so much. Love that. Anybody else who would like to share their thoughts? Yes, Ellie.
I kind of cheated because I drew some tarot cards before we came on today for like inspiration, and these are the 2. And so this one is judgment, which is meant to be a reminder to not judge others, and also that a judgment on others is a judgment on yourself. So something to be discerning about. And then this one is the 2 of Cups, which is really resonant for me because the one thing that I really took from John's talking was that he said you can't give what you don't have. And like the cup, like you can't share from your cup if it's empty. So you have to look after yourself as part of the like reciprocation of sharing and supporting and serving.
Thank you so much. Melissa?
So I just picked some of the quotes out and wrote them on a big piece of paper. So the first one is from John. In order to influence change, you need to have a seat at the table. The next one is give yourself to your communities, hear them and reflect through your art. And that's yours, Chrissy. Food connects people, give the joy of food back to people who experience it is a barrier. That's Ellie. And Laura, my quest started when I encountered a problem and wanted to find a solution. And then what Laura said, this one, I just put this on its own sheet. I have something to give, because that really struck with me. So yeah, I just wanted to represent people's words.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Anybody else who would like to share their reflection before we come to a close? It's nearly time. Yes, Ashley.
I haven't got a massive thing to say in terms of my creative brain is completely switched off for some reason.
That's okay.
But I was thinking about Ellie's proposal, and Ellie was talking about where do you start and how do you start to make change on a board. And it occurred to me that by asking that question, she already had started. I wanted people to remember that sometimes your journey doesn't start when an action happens. The journey starts with a thought process to create change, and that then has a ripple effect. And to continue to be brave with yourself, continue to realize that we have all got our minds in the right place and that we're all working towards a positive change. And along the way, there's going to be people who are going to say, oh, no, that's not important, or why are you thinking about that? But to lock hold of that core that you've grappled with in your mind and to continue that process, because when you get to the end, if you've given your passion to it, it's going to create the most authentic work, to reference Corey. So that's my thought.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you. Okay, it's 4 o'clock, and that's Corey. Do you have something to say before we close? You're mute, Corey.
Sorry. It's Friday, and so I just want to say thank you to you for curating this panel and hosting it and everything else, because I think you've done a great job, and everyone who spoke been fantastic and drawn something out of me and the conversations, and makes you think. I'm going through this whole new reflecting on myself moment, and so I thought Friday, last thing that we need to do, I'm just going to light a candle.
Yay! Love candles.
You know, our light is strong and it burns bright, and we've got lots more to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chrissy. You've done a brilliant job in organising these conversations and creating this space for this really incredible conversation today. Thank you to our contributors. Before we go, I know you need to run on to your next thing. We I just want to make an advert for next week and the week after. So next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock, we've got a couple hours together to develop our project. So that is about this continuous conversation about what are we doing together. And then the following week, Becky will be running a session with Beat Freaks and Mark from the Trust that's about knowing my city as a workshop. So that's really thinking about how do we connect with others to understand their perspectives. So really connecting with some of the conversation Ellie helped us have today. And how do we tell stories about our city in ways that aren't just about numbers, but are about, that have some warmth. We had a meeting with Becky yesterday, and we've got a meeting with Beat Freaks and Becky on Monday to start shaping that workshop for you, led by Becky, thinking about different ways of connecting, understanding others and understanding ourselves. So I'm really looking forward to both those things, and it feels like they all tie together really nicely with the conversations that we've been having today. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks to Pam for all her organising. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Well done. Thank you. Bye.
Welcome. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Brilliant hosting. Thank you.